Hey, what's going on? I'm Ryan Glick, co-founder and CEO of Groove. And if you're a real estate professional, I have something I think you're going to be interested in. We've developed a platform that's transforming the way deals are prospected and managed in the real estate world. With Groove, you can organize real estate data in one place and share real estate deals with just one click. Join other real estate pros and reclaim up to 90% of your time. Head over to letsgroove.com/signup and start your free trial today.
Chasmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Chasmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Chasmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at chasmium.com. Chasmium, where sports technology sparks victory. Appreciate our sponsors and advertisers here on the show as we recap Iowa football and its 40-14 win over the Northwestern Wildcats. And can we just start with something? Our dear friend Alex acknowledged that I had the score up incorrectly to start. It said 40-16 for a while. If I don't get that out of the way, I'll get ripped to the end of mankind. I'll probably get ripped anyways because people are just waiting to pounce. In spite of the 26-point blowout and the quarterback change. We're going to get to all of that. Coach Patterson is en route back to his home base. He'll be joining us here shortly. We'll be chatting at least for the next couple of hours. So be sure you stick right here. Keep it locked in. If you have a phone, tablet, smart TV, and you're streaming, thank you. Be sure you tell your friends. Maybe send out a text message to some Hawkeye buddies, or certainly share it on social media, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you social media. And be sure to hit that like button right off the bat, folks. The earlier you do that in the stream, the quicker we get our stream out to other people, and YouTube helps us in the algorithm. So please do that here in advance. Again, 40-14, the final score from Kinnick Stadium, and we got a plethora of people who want to hop on. But before we get to our first caller of the day, because I know this is going to be a question early, I already saw James threw this up in the private chat. Who is the player of the game? Well, I know people aren't going to agree with my player of the game, and I went back and forth on this late in the fourth quarter after a couple of things that occurred. But our RTI Threads player of the game is Reese Dakin. 8 punts, 4 punts that landed and were downed inside the 10-yard line. We're going to get to those in a second. 2 punts of 50-plus. Now, the only reason I sort of hesitated was because I think Coach Patterson, and it'll be interesting when we get Don on here in a few minutes, I'll be interested to get his take on the punt return for a touchdown for Northwestern, because I do think that punt, first of all, that was a 45-yarder, so a little short based upon every other. I mean, it was his second shortest punt of the day. Not great hang time, and it gave the rookie, the freshman returner, walk-on returner, an opportunity to have that split second he needed to find a seam. He did so and returned it for a touchdown. But what a difference Reese Dakin made in that first half. We're talking 4 punts inside the 10, and let me read you where these punts were down. And give credit to the entire special teams gunning team, right? The entire punt team, they were all a factor in this. But Dakin had 4 punts inside the 10. One was down at the 6, one was down at the 6, one was down at the 6th, and another was down at the 5. And remember, in that first half, I was struggling to gain ground offensively. They had not yet made, well, a couple of the punts. I shouldn't say that. The change was made to Brendan Sullivan with about 9 minutes to go in the second quarter, but it took Brendan a few drives, a few series to, I think, get his feet under him. It wasn't like he was making big mistakes, but certainly his ability to move the chains as the game proceeded, especially with his feet. I thought he looked composed from the beginning, but it just took some time, I think, for him to gain his confidence. And I think it was just a major turning point in this game to be able to control the field in spite of bringing in a fresh face, a guy who's not played inside the 20s. Like between the 20s this year, he has not played. And Reese Dakin was phenomenal. And this is a guy who early on in the year, people were complaining about the hit Iowa had taken at that position. Reese Dakin is not Tory Taylor, but he is really good. And he's a true freshman. And I would anticipate he's going to get better. They did a phenomenal job. LeVar Woods did a phenomenal job going to Australia, going to the same kicking academy, and finding another kid from down under, a kid like Reese Dakin, who is younger than Tory was when Tory got here. But again, Dakin has been phenomenal, and he was phenomenal tonight. He probably could have been awarded this earlier in the season, because punting is such a big part of what Iowa does with field position and how Kirk plays, whether you agree with the punts on 4th and 1, 4th and 2 or not. He was phenomenal. He is our RTI Threads player of the game. And our show, as always, is sponsored by RTI Threads. Their baseball site is up and live, iowabaseballswarm.com, but you can also shop the official merchandise of guys like Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer, who both got extended run as this game went on, and Aaron Graves had a couple of big plays. Jacob Gill, his buddy Sullivan, getting the start tonight. It was a great day for the former Wildcat skill position players, Gill and Sullivan. But you can shop this merchandise over at rtithreads.com and click on NIL. We'll show you the website here later in the show. But we appreciate RTI Threads over in the Sioux City area for being a part of this show once again this season. Our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line is up and ready to go. If you need direction on that, we look like we just had somebody. I'll just say this once. I'm not going to say it again because I say it every week and people apparently just choose to ignore. If you call in via the telephone line, that's 515-635-1601. If you call in that way and then you hang up, you're going to go back to the end of the line when you call back again. So I would encourage you to use a different device to call in than you used to watch the show, because you're not going to be able to hear the show if you're on the phone line. You can hear it if you're on StreamYard. If you're on the telephone line, you're not going to be able to hear the show during the course of your hold time. And you may wait on hold for a while because we have a lot of people who want to chat. So just a heads up, but the number is 515-635-1601 we do have a caller who got here bright and early. Thank you for calling our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Who's on the line?
My name is James.
Hey, James. How you doing, buddy?
Now that I had been doing quite well. I kind of really enjoyed today's game. I have to say it was quite refreshing to see Legion break one off for 85 yards today.
And what a difference he made last week. Kirk Ferentz made the comment during his media availability leading up to this game that Caden Weegan was really the only bright spot in that loss at Michigan State. And he's been a guy who's kind of gone unnoticed, but he finally broke one today. And the punt return game was a phenomenal punt. I'm going to use that word. I'm going to sound like Fran McCaffrey today. Phenomenal. It was a great punt return, and he could have easily been our player of the game because he's just been so consistent and consistently getting – not many teams get kick return yards, but Iowa does because they got a good one in Caden Weegan, and he's phenomenal with punt returns. And they're two very separate, unique skills. He's good at both.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have to say, I don't know if it was confirmed or not. I can't remember, but if memory serves me correctly, I think I remember Gary Dolphin or Pat that said Cade got hurt, and that's why they ended up putting Sullivan in. I don't know. Do you know if that's true or if it was confirmed or not?
Well, I can tell you that was the talk. I'm assuming you listened to the radio broadcast. That was the talk on television. And it's funny you say that, James, because when it happened, and I think it was Anthony Herron that made the comment that Cade was not standing with his helmet. I'm not saying he wasn't hurt. I don't know. But I made the comment when it happened. I said to a buddy who was sitting next to me, I said, you watch. The narrative after this game from Iowa is going to be that Cade went down to injury. And, I don't want him to be hurt. Let me make that very clear. But if that's
right,
whether it's true or not that he's dinged up, whatever you need to feel better sleeping at night, making a change. But Cade threw two horrendous interceptions before that, one of which was called back due to a phantom roughing penalty. Two horrendous interceptions. And so the fact that Brendan was inserted at that point, okay, maybe it was related to some injury that Cade sustained, but I think the change was going to happen. And if you watch my preview, James, heading into this game, I made that comment. I said, I think he'll play in the second quarter. I said, I think they'll insert Brendan before the end of the first half because Kirk emphasized during the past 6 days the need to get off to a better start. Cade was inaccurate early as he was a week ago, and he's the guy. I mean, regardless of what happens, I will be shocked if Cade McNamara starts the game against Wisconsin. I'll be shocked.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, I totally agree. I think Sullivan should be the guy going forward. Like after today, like the offense, it looked night and day difference. Even in our 4 other victories that we have had this year, with Sullivan back there at quarterback, the offense, it looked night and day different. We could do whatever we wanted whenever we wanted.
Yeah, maybe a bit of an exaggeration of the truth, James, because they did have probably 3 or 4 3-and-outs with Sully. But I get what you're saying. No, I agree with you. And for the record, he fits the system better. I think he fits what Lester wants better. And, Angela with the super chat here in our live chat, who really calls the shots on who's playing at quarterback, Lester or Kirk. Ultimately, that's going to come down to Kirk. Now, Kirk may say, well, Tim is ultimately making personnel decisions. That's Kirk. But I've no doubt that Tim has a very large say in that. And I'm sure it was discussed. I know it was discussed heading into this game. At what point are we going to make a change? I think that's why I just had the feeling heading into this game that they were close to making the change. They weren't going to start Sullivan, but they were close to making that change. And who knows if Cade recognized that. I think he did. He didn't seem, it's not like you looked at the sideline. It didn't look like he was completely bewildered as to why he wasn't playing. And maybe he was dinged up, but I agree with you. Sullivan's ability to make.
I was going to say, I don't know if he was dinged up or not. Like I had to listen to Gary and Pat on YouTube because I was at work, and my mom messaged me and made the comment, that Cade, like when Sullivan scored his first touchdown, she said it looked like Cade didn't really go over and congratulate him, and I don't know if that's because he was hurt or what was going on
Yeah,
with that.
I don't know about that. They did show one highlight where he did go over and congratulate him. But yeah, I don't think
And like I said, I mean, I don't know if that was just like a one-off deal, but and maybe today's kind of almost like Scully's coming out party.
yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people are going to come on this show and say that it was overdue. I can't disagree with you on that, but at the same time, I think we need to pull the reins back a little bit and recognize this was Northwestern. It's a decent defense, but they're going to be tested next week. Next week is the test. Even though they get another home game, it's against a much better Wisconsin team. And the Wisconsin team is playing really well. It'll be interesting to see what Wisconsin does tonight against Penn State.
Right. I was going to say, like, I'm myself, like, I'm happy about today and happy about the success that Tully had, but at the same time, like, okay, we were playing Northwestern,
Yep. Nope. That's fair.
Now, time will only tell on that. But
yep. 100%. James, appreciate you calling in, sir.
I was going to say, I got to scoot. I got to get back to work. I only had a 3 minutes here. So
well, thank you for taking the time.
Sit back and listen to the show and go Hawks.
Thanks, James. Go Hawks. Appreciate the call, buddy. Good stuff from James. And Angela, again, thank you for the super chat. Jared Sullivan definitely adds another dimension with his leg, which is greatly needed. But I'm slightly worried about his passing accuracy. Way too early to be worried, Jared. I think there's reason to be, cautiously optimistic with everything, right? Cautious with your take on anything as it relates to the Iowa offense, including quarterback play, because we've seen bad quarterback play for a long time. But we didn't see enough out of Brendan. I don't know how many throws did Brendan even attempt of over 10 yards? I don't know that he made any attempts over 10 yards. So that, I think part of that was game plan and not giving him too much to worry about. Part of that was, I think he was playing it safe at times. He had options, had possibilities at throws. And, the great thing, as you said in the super chat, Jared, the dimension he adds with his legs, even on 3rd and 2 situations, you can see why Iowa had been using him in short yardage situations, or at least goal line situations. I think they could have been utilizing him more on critical downs, short yardage situations. And now, assuming he's the guy, at least for the time being, he's the starter, they'll have that dimension not only in the goal line, not only on short yardage critical downs, but also with waist down potentially. We saw a QB draw. I wanted to talk to Coach Patterson about the QB draw they ran out of empty, which is good to see. Again, having a guy who can run. And I threw his stats up earlier briefly, but let's take a look at them. So Brendan played about 2.5 quarters, a little more than 2.5 quarters of this game. 9 of 14, 79 yards through the air. Modest numbers. 8 carries, 41 rushing yards. Those are impressive numbers. All right. Those are impressive numbers for an Iowa quarterback. They just are, right? Not screaming Heisman, right? But impressive numbers. But pump the brakes because we have to see more, just like we had to see more from Cade. I thought Cade played well at Minnesota. I thought Cade played pretty well against, let's see, who did they play? Was it Troy? Now, Northwestern is a better defensive test than Troy is, certainly. But my point is, you got to see more than one game. And I wasn't ready to bench Cade after one game. I didn't think he played very well against Illinois State. I thought he got fortunate on a couple of throws in that one. Ultimately, we have to see a bigger sample size before making these grandiose statements and conclusions about Brendan Sullivan's future. But I do like Brendan, and the one thing you are going to have, regardless of his abilities with his arm, is you have a much more athletic threat on the ground. And that is a positive for an offense that continues to need different ways to attack you because teams are dialing up on Caleb Johnson. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Caleb Johnson started to pop off some longer runs once Brendan Sullivan was inserted into the game. I don't think that's a coincidence. Again, we'll be anxious to get Coach Patterson, his opinion on all this when he joins the show here in a little bit. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got Alex. Alex, welcome. Good to see you, buddy.
Good evening. How are you doing, Corey?
I'm doing good. I saw you motioning in the queue. I don't know what you were motioning about. I think I asked the question of how many attempts did Iowa have with Brendan of over 10 yards. I don't know.
I thought you were asking like how many attempts, pass attempts, and I thought it was 10 or 11, but you said over 10, and that I didn't know. So
yeah, I don't think they had very many.
Yeah. But how dare you get the score wrong?
Yep, 40-16 instead of 40-14. Big deal.
Yeah. So
and how about this? Iowa, real quick, Alex, Iowa covered the 14.5. Now, I'm not a betting man, but I said it during my preview segment, actually during my score prediction earlier today. 14.5, I thought was a pretty large spread, given both of these teams' defenses, although Iowa struggled last week defensively. That wouldn't... I just thought that was a little disrespectful to the Northwestern defense. It's been pretty good. What do I know? Then they blow open for a 26-point win. So
and that and Iowa alone, I think, hit the over by themselves too. So Iowa's, I think, 6-1.
Well, had to have hit the over. What was the over under?
37.5, I think, is what it closed at.
Okay.
So yeah. I think that, but yeah, so Iowa over 6-1. But so kind of talking about your player of the game, you talked about the touchdown that Northwestern got. And when they did the replay, credit to the kid, because there was 2 Iowa guys around him, and they got both of them slipped off of him, and then he proceeded to break 2 other tackles. So the punt wasn't necessarily terrible. Iowa just had some bad tackling on that.
Wasn't terrible, but it did lack hang time. I mean, I didn't time it, but it was a little. I'm guessing he'll go back as a critician of himself and say, I got to do better with hang time, because if you get that ball, you keep that ball in the air a little longer, he's not returning it at all. He's having to fair catch it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the one thing that you can do in that situation is give that ball a little bit more time up there, and he's normally pretty darn good keeping the ball up there.
Yeah. And I know Vanderzee was seen in a boot, I think, second or third quarter. But I'm going to touch on that just in a second. I don't know about how you feel about this, but I feel pretty good about Iowa's wide receiver room for the future. Vanderzee, Seth Anderson, if he stays around. I said against Washington, you were not on the call. I believe Kyle took your spot. I said I would tell you what crow tastes like, but I think hunting crow is illegal. So we'll just say.
Wait a minute. What are you giving me crow for? What am I eating crow for?
I said I'm eating crow on Seth Anderson. Because if you remember my comments about, like, I think he's not going to play and he'll transfer out. Now, he could still transfer out, but I didn't think he'd play. I thought he would just kind of make sure he's healthy for the transfer portal.
Well,
again,
why would he transfer out now? I mean, Caleb Brown's gone and
I don't know. Kids make some weird decisions. I mean, sure. Charlie Jones was with us for a while, and then he decides to transfer out because he wasn't listed as number 1 wide receiver going into that season. So I hope he doesn't. Like, so I'm taking my lumps. I'm swallowing the pride. So,
hey, that's a big thing for you to say. You think this wide receiver room's in a good place, because you were one of those people that was adamant that Caleb Brown needed more playing time, and not only did Caleb Brown not get more playing time, he's gone.
Yeah.
So,
but Dayton Howard, I think he's a true freshman. I think he gets a little more understanding of Tim Lester's playbook and some speed. He's got a good size. I think he'd be a good wide receiver. Is Weegan junior or is he a senior? Does he have one more year?
He's got at least one more year. Yeah.
Okay. I think he has a great opportunity to develop. I think Iowa's wide receiver room could be something that people sleep on come next year. That's just maybe a hot take on my part, but I think this wide receiver room has the ceiling's higher for this wide receiver.
Well, let me clarify something. So I'm looking on here and I'm seeing on the Iowa website, he is listed as a senior, but let me clarify this because he did not see game action in 2022. So he's got a year left. He's got a year of eligibility left.
Good. So obviously Iowa's right. And then I also think everyone's kind of like finally Caden got his touchdown on a special teams. He's just been so close. So it's kind of happy to see him get his touchdown. But going to the first half of the game when Cade was in there, Iowa could have easily been up 7-0 right away. So let's talk about what Cade did really well. That pass to Seth Anderson had plenty of air. but he just over him just a little bit. If he drops it right in the pocket, I think Seth Anderson scores on that. He had beat his guy. But credit to Seth Anderson for laying out for that catch. But then also on the goal line, or when they were in first and goal, first off, we didn't see Sullivan, which was weird. And then also he had Seth Anderson again. Like Seth Anderson again laid out for a ball that he was out of bounds with, or he landed out of bounds. So hopefully that, if Sullivan is the starter, they can, maybe we can see more of a accurate throw from him, hitting him right in stride, so that way the wide receivers don't have to lay out for a catch.
And let's not forget that he then missed Seth Anderson again in the end zone. Seth almost made another tremendous attempt. I mean, Seth looked really good on those two plays.
Oh yeah, no, and I said that too. He overthrew him both times. One, Seth just made a hell of a play for 65 yards, and that was pretty much airtime. And I think the knock on Cade was that he doesn't have that great of an arm, but it seemed like, well, he can throw the ball. And then you talked about the roughing the passer. It's one of those penalties where you hate it unless it's for your team. Then it's like, oh yeah, definitely roughing the passer. The one thing I could say is the guy drove him into the ground. I think that's why the call was made. But
is there and there's going to be some people that really resent me saying this, but it's almost like 2 years ago when there were people who were rooting against Iowa because they just needed enough losses to see Brian Ferentz get canned. And I'm not saying that's the same situation, but isn't there a part of you, Alex, that in that moment you're like, man, I don't want to see this interception overturned because that was one of the worst throws. We said that last week with one of Cade's interceptions. And that was one of the worst throws I've ever seen a quarterback make. He was not hit. He literally did not have the laces, and the ball just slips out of his hand, goes straight up in the air, easy interception. You almost hate to see that overturned because we're all looking at that thinking, bench the guy. Like, it's enough is enough. But it almost felt like in that moment he got bailed out by the call because he stayed on the field. Now, eventually he got benched anyways, but I digress. Yes, I agree with you. You want that call to go in your favor. Yes.
But it's kind of like if you ever heard the term, the ball don't lie, you threw another interception, which turned out to be a pick six, which was, I think, okay, we'll give Sully a chance. And then the one thing when that first half, which I question the play calling, and maybe Don, when he gets on here, it's something you can ask, is that obviously, and you said it before I came on, was that teams are looking at Caleb Johnson as our number one threat. This is the guy, if we can contain him, we are forcing Iowa to do something they're not comfortable with, which is pass the ball. On first downs, from when I was counting in the first half, we ran 0 play action passes. We were running it, and Northwestern knew what was coming, and Caleb Johnson got hit for a loss, I think, 3 or 4 times in that first half. And then Sullivan comes in, his ability to use his legs, hit a couple throws, maybe little dink and dunk throws, and then Caleb gets the ball and he breaks one. It's because, okay, the defense now has to look at Sullivan, look at some of the wide receivers that we're using and our tight ends, and say, okay, we have to pay attention to these guys now because, yeah, they're dinking and dunking, but they're close to the goal line. And then credit to Caleb, too, for breaking 3 tackles on that first touchdown drive, too. That was near the end of the half. Speaking near the end of the half, something we saw reverse as opposed to the Michigan State game. Iowa had, I think, like 10 or less minutes in that Michigan State game of time of possession that first half. They had 17 and a half minutes of time of possession in this first half. So I think that obviously helps when Iowa holds the ball on longer, gives their defense time to rest, kind of predicts, makes the opposing offense a little more predictable. Obviously, when it's down on that goal line, it's a lot easier to kind of see what they're doing. And then kind of lastly on Sullivan is when he hit that little toss pass to Jake, I know I'm going to say his name wrong, Pazuki. When I was tight end.
Pazuki. Yeah.
The hit, and now we can talk about how he can run with the ball, and it's a different threat. Now Don may come on here and say, hey, that's great that Sullivan outran his guy to block, but at the same time, it's like, don't do that because you're going to get hurt on that long, I think 60 some odd yard catch by Jake.
Yeah, I thought it was great effort by Brendan. And
I love seeing it. I think Iowa fans love seeing it too.
Yeah, he was ready to go down the field and block. Like, it wasn't a second thought. He was flip it, go. And, I'm happy for Johnny Pascuzzi too, because he's a guy who was in the portal in the offseason, opted to come back, kind of buried on the depth chart. He's got good tight ends in front of him. had a 40-yard reception. That was a big play for the offense.
No, and I agree, and I think that what we saw from Sullivan is that like I'm going to block for my guy, and we did see that from Cade a little bit against Minnesota when Caleb Johnson.
He can't move like Brendan.
But I'm just saying it was on a shorter yardage, and Sullivan's a bigger guy too. And then
that was a play. Listen, that very simply put, Alex, the play you're talking about was a play that Cade just could not make. He can't make that play.
Oh no, and I think that what we talk about with Sullivan is adding that dynamic. And, if we can see in Wisconsin that he can throw the ball and be accurate with the ball to his wide receivers and tight ends, I think this Iowa offense is going to be something that, going forward. And it sucks because it's happening so damn late in the year to where we've already lost 3 games. Our chances for playoffs are pretty much gone. And it sucks because it's like we always look back at what could have been at that point. So, maybe a question for you and maybe for Don too. And then I have one more thing is if Sullivan is the starter, which I think he should be against Wisconsin, how long is his leash?
How long should it be or how long is it?
Yes.
I mean, okay, let me make this very clear. If Cade's actually dinged up, his leash is really long because I think there's a big gap right now from the coaching staff between Sullivan and Linez.
Yeah, but I was kind of hoping to see Linez near the very end, but they never put him in. But
that's my point. So, if Cade's dinged up, he's got a really long leash. If Cade's healthy, the leash isn't very long, and I don't like that because Cade's gotten a really long leash. Like when Sully missed a throw early, I think he overthrew Seth Anderson on an out, one of his first couple passes of his game. I thought, and I even verbalized this. I said, "All right, he's going to make some mistakes here, right?" But Cade's been given a lot of mistakes, a lot of time, a lot of leash. So he should be given a good amount of leash.
Yeah.
But it's clear Kirk does not believe there's some big gap there between Sullivan and Cade. And until today, Kirk has acted like and verbalized that Cade is the best guy. So I'd have to think that the leash is short. But hopefully Brendan just goes out there and balls. It's historically for Iowa quarterbacks been hard to perform against this Wisconsin defense. Now, it's a different coaching staff than we're accustomed to, but even last year, Iowa went up there and won, not because of the offense. You got the big run from Leishon, but in general, it was great defense. Usually special teams come into play. So we'll see.
Yep. And then the last thing is we'll say that I think it was the second or third touchdown run by Caleb Johnson. Just love to see Mason Richard pancake that linebacker to give Caleb Johnson give him that extra, extra block just to get that touchdown. So, but hey, it's, I think it's a great win. I thought a lot of people thought this game would be a lot closer than what it was. I'm a little concerned because Iowa did this to Washington, laid an egg against Michigan State. Now we come back against Northwestern. I think it's great resilience by the team. Now we just got to see who comes out, which team decides to play against Wisconsin. Is it the Washington Northwestern team or is it the Michigan State team?
Well, let me say this. I know they lost to Iowa State at home, but I'll say this. The Michigan State game was on the road. This game was at home. Washington was at home. Next week's at home. I think the bigger concern is what happens when they travel to UCLA now and what happens when they travel to Maryland, because
Maryland does not look good. If you watch any of their games, Maryland does not look good.
Alex, Michigan State had not looked good prior to last week.
Well, Maryland has lost to some bad teams though too.
Didn't Maryland beat Michigan State? Or did Michigan State narrowly beat Maryland?
I think Michigan State beat them.
Narrowly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. At home, you'd like to think there's a difference. Remember, they struggled mightily in the first half against Minnesota up there, and it wasn't until Caleb Johnson busted through with the running game in the second half. So they've kind of struggled on the road. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do in those 2 road games, but they got to win out. I mean, I keep saying that. They had to win out before last week to have any chance. Now they're out of the playoff mix. They're out of the Big Ten championship mix, but you still feel like they got to win out. Like there's no games left that they should lose.
Feels like putting a Band-Aid on an amputated arm at this point, because it's just like, well, it was like, in the past, it was like Big Ten championship playoffs. Now it's kind of been reversed due to the 12-team playoff to where, hey, if we don't make the Big Ten championship, we can at least make the playoffs. Now it's gone. And I think with the amount of hype, and it seems like when Iowa comes in with a lot of hype, you look at 2016, you look at this year, even probably 2022, when we had a lot of players returning, it was like, oh, hey, this team could really make some noise. And then I don't know if the hype gets to them or teams really prepare for us at that point. But, I still stick with it's been a disappointing. I'm not going to call it a failure season. If they lose against any of the teams left on their schedule, I would call it a failure then, because 8-4, I think, is absolutely, that's an absolute failure at that point. So, anyways, I'll get off. I know there's probably a lot of people want to get on. So, thanks,
Absolutely.
Corey.
Alex,
have a happy Halloween, since the next game will be on the 2nd, November 2nd.
absolutely.
All right. Have a good night. Uh-oh.
Appreciate the call, Alex. Good stuff. Thank you, Alex, for calling in to our Hawkeyes line. Let's go to our next caller. We have got James on our Iowa Smokehouse calling line. James, welcome.
First off, you know what's going to happen if Cade is hurt, right?
You tell me.
It's going to be what I put in the chat. It's going to be Kirk saying, I didn't bench him. He got hurt. He did that with Petrus the 1 year. He did that with other quarterbacks in the future where he's like, I didn't bench them. The quarterbacks got hurt.
Well, I don't think he's ever said that. I didn't bench him, but that's the.
I mean, that's what he meant by saying it the way he said it, though. Yeah. That's what he meant. He didn't say it, but that's what he meant. Yeah.
2 years ago. You're absolutely right. Ironically enough, that was against Northwestern, the game at Northwest. Was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
It was 2, I'm pretty sure. Petrus, because Padilla came in, didn't he?
Yeah.
Padilla transferred last year, so it probably was 2 years ago because Padilla transferred last year.
Might have been 2021.
First year at SMU. Well, I know last year was the first year at SMU, so I don't know about after that, but it might have been 2021. I think you're right.
First of all, I gotta apologize for all these sirens. I have no idea. I do not live on the west side of LA, but we've had sirens going through my neighborhood for like the last 15 minutes.
Maybe people are mad that Iowa State's not playing. Maybe that's why they're throwing a little bit of a fit or something.
And normally the sirens go off at Jack Trice, so they have to have the sirens with it.
Yeah. But no, it was a good game, obviously, like you said. I mean, I feel like the optics, it's going to be a bad look if he does go back to Cade, but also I feel like if he's actually hurt, that is a tendency of something Kirk would do. Be like, okay, is hurt. And I'm not saying that's the right decision. I think
he's not going to go back. He's not going back to Cade unless Brendan starts having problems.
I mean,
he's not going back. He can say what he wants to say, but too many people were impressed with what we saw from Brendan in a game.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could defend going back to Cade at that.
I don't know how you can defend him not playing Brendan this whole time, though.
Because we haven't seen him in a game, so he can keep talking about how great Cade is in practice compared to Brendan. But now we've seen him in the game, and how do you defend that?
No, I agree with you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think that's something he would consider because he's like, oh, he got hurt. But I'm not saying I disagree with you. I agree with you 100%. But I'm just saying that. But I do feel like it was the way you need to play. Obviously, the first half kind of was ugly. But, that's sometimes you make it ugly. But at the end of the day, you just find a way to pull through. But I want to talk about the wide receiver room and the fact of, like, I feel in the same boat as Alex, where, like, I feel like I don't know if I trusted depth right, but like losing Reese hurts, but he's a true freshman. You do have Dane Howard, who's and I'm not trying to call Alex out for this, but he's a freshman redshirt, not a true freshman. But I'm not trying to call Alex out on that. I'm just saying he is a freshman redshirt, not a true freshman. But,
sure.
But and then you got
wait. Who are we talking about?
Howard. He said he's a true freshman, but he's a freshman redshirt.
Yes, Vanderzee's a true freshman.
Yeah, he's a true freshman, but he said Howard's a true freshman too. But and then obviously Bowie. But it would be interesting to see. But I'm happy Seth played well today. But that throw, man, if Cade puts it on, hits him in stride, that's a touchdown as well. And I think that's something people don't talk about either because they're like, oh, well, he made a big play, yeah, but if he hits him in stride, he was wide open.
Yeah,
that's a touchdown. So
it is great effort by Seth, and I'd rather that slightly overthrown than slightly underthrown.
But, yeah, for sure.
But it'd be nice to hit a guy in stride for once.
Definitely, for sure. And one thing I think we don't talk about either is when Brendan goes in, if you watch that first touchdown by Caleb, when Brendan fakes the handoff, they're all looking at him, right? And like you don't get that opportunity when you have Cade in the game. They're not worried about Cade running. But they were all looking at him because they knew there was a chance he could pull it and take off with the ball. And that's what kind of left the hole open is they all went one way thinking Brendan was going to keep it. And Caleb went the other way on the other side and had the ball. And I feel like that's another reason he brings to the motion. That's something we haven't ever seen at Iowa, really, because we always had statue quarterbacks who just sit back there and just can't move. And I think that's another thing that opened up that game really for us. And that's one thing I said. I thought he played a game, not that he played the best, right? I'm not saying Brendan Sullivan played the best, but I feel it's the impact he had, like on plays like that, and finding ways to move his feet. And even we can talk about the play. Yes, it's a throw out of bounds. It's not the prettiest play, right? But he broke off the play, went right, broke off the tackles, went left, and then threw it out of bounds instead of taking a sack. Because if that's Cade, that would have been a sack, right? You know what I'm talking about? The one where
Yeah,
he went right and then came
correct.
back left and then just threw it out of bounds, right? Like that's the play
Yeah,
that would have been a sack.
that was the moment where Anthony Herron made a comment about how Kirk would probably prefer a quicker throwaway. I don't know if you caught that, but
yeah, I mean, he probably would have. Yes, I agree. But I'm saying, like in general, you made a play still out of it, of something that Cade or anybody else who've had a quarterback for how long ever would have took a sack on that because they can't move. Was the point I was trying to make, right? Like he made a play out of something that everybody else would have took a sack on. We would have lost 10, 15 yards, But
yeah. There were a number of plays today, James, that you and I both know Cade just can't make due to his lack of mobility and lack of athleticism.
Definitely. And I feel like with Brendan, it helps that rollout game too. It helps you with the rollout game because he's actually option to run the ball. And you saw some of those even on the first couple drives where yes, we got 3 and outs, but he was getting close to first down. He was getting 4th and 1. He was getting 4th and 2 because he was using his feet on the rollouts because there was nothing there. He was still trying to get the first down. Where Cade can't do that. So that's where you get the 4th and 5, 4th and 6 options, And I feel like the first 2 drives, it kind of took him a while to get his feet under him. But
well, I'll tell you this. They have an opportunity now to make Wisconsin, and this really they don't have any control over, but Wisconsin's now got to figure out how to defend Brennan Sullivan, because when's the last time they've had to defend a mobile Iowa quarterback? CJ Beathard probably in 2016.
Yeah, so, this is also a different system too of like Tim Lester and a mobile quarterback is what I mean, right? Tim Lester
totally
and a mobile
different
quarterback.
staff, right?
Yeah,
Totally different staff. But I'm saying like even compared to what they faced last year.
No, yeah, for sure.
Deacon Hill.
For sure. Yeah, but I'm saying you have Tim Lester and a mobile quarterback as well, and that's even more of a wrinkle you have to think about too from the other team's perspective. Yeah.
100%.
But I feel I'm just happy with the way we played in the second half. Obviously, the first half you want to clean up some things, but the defense was flat out phenomenal today, and flat out phenomenal. And I'm gonna give shout outs to somebody who we've kind of harped on, that DB2 position. I know we're playing Northwestern, right? But I'm gonna give a shout out to Deshaun Lee because I felt like he played well today, and I know we usually harp on that DB2 or the CB2 position, right? So I want to give him their flowers when I feel like they play well, right? So I'm gonna give Deshaun his flowers for the day at least because I felt like he played well, and I know this isn't the best receiving core we play. This isn't the best receiving core you're gonna play, but you still gotta give him his flowers when he makes plays, right? Like that too, but.
We must like the word phenomenal because I've used that a couple of times and you just use that for the defense. But you're right. The defense was really good. And first drive looked a little bit suspect. But
then they missed a field goal and then it kind of settled in again. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the Washington. Not as much taking of a second drive again, but like they drove down, missed a field goal, and then everything kind of just swung our way a little bit, Not our way in that fact of like you could tell the defense kind of felt, okay, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And then they finally just turned it on after that. But yeah. It was a good game, and obviously Wisconsin can be tough. But I want to see how Wisconsin looks against Penn State. I think that's going to be a big outlier tonight too. Is kind of how they look against Penn State, and Penn State's obviously a way better team than I think that we are at this point right now. So that's definitely how it's the outlier too. But also, like you said, it's at home, and I think you give those points at home, and you see what the crowd can do and can. They're a big impact too to us.
James, appreciate you calling in, sir. Feel free to call in later if you want to at Coach Patterson, but we always appreciate your early calls.
Yeah, no problem. And one more thing I want to say, I don't know if Caden Weechin has another year because I looked at the profile. He was there. He was at Iowa Western in 21. He was at Iowa Western in 22, and then he was there last year and there this year for Iowa.
But he didn't play in 22.
But it didn't say he redshirted either, though.
Well, but he didn't play.
He was at Western though. I don't know if he redshirted at Western. He wasn't here.
But he didn't play.
That doesn't mean he redshirted though. Just because I know people in JUCO who don't redshirt.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. He didn't play, so I don't think.
Yeah, but I'm saying on his profile though it says 21.
I know it doesn't say. It doesn't.
It says 21, 22, 23, 24, and it says he's a senior still. If he redshirted, wouldn't he be a junior if he only played 21, 22, 23, 24?
Well, academically, he's a senior, but I don't know that means he doesn't have an extra year.
I don't know how their website works. I'm saying I don't know how their website works. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if the website.
Let's also remember that up until recently, he was a walk-on.
Walk-on, yeah.
So that's also a factor in coming back for an extra year, and maybe that's the difference in verbiage there on the website. Because if you're a walk-on, coming back for an extra year costs money.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on scholarship in the spot,
Yeah, I didn't know how that worked. I just looked at his
I don't either.
profile and it said 21, 22, 23.
Good
So I didn't
question.
know how that
I don't
worked.
have the answer to that, but I'm just saying, based on
Yeah.
what I know, even at the JUCO level, if he didn't play in 22, he would have another year, assuming he got to Western in 21. I mean, you could pull up his
Iowa Western. I might pull up his Iowa Western profile
say
and just see what it says.
Williamsburg. Yeah,
Yeah,
Williamsburg.
Williamsburg. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But I might pull that up while I'm away, and I'll let you know what I can find out. So
Sounds good. Thank you, James. Appreciate your call,
enjoy
sir.
it.
You too. All right, folks, we are recapping Iowa's 40-14 win, and Coach John Patterson is set to join us here in just minutes. I'm told he is just minutes away, so keep it locked right here as we continue to discuss the win, the quarterback change, and everything in between. I got tons of notes to run through, and we'll get to all of those. Do want to thank Chase, who made a donation here via Venmo. He comments, haven't seen many quarterbacks pass the ball, then block for their receivers. Proud moment for Sully. Played a great game, and would absolutely agree with that. Quite a play, and those are the types of plays you want a gamer quarterback to make. And it kind of got that crowd rejuvenated. I thought it got the sideline, the Iowa sideline, looked refreshed. And like I said, with playing yourself out of contention for some of your bigger goals this season, felt like they needed to pick me up. And a quarterback change, in my mind, was the quickest way to get that pick me up. Obviously, winning big helps, but still, getting the quarterback change, then the big win, is a real pick me up. Brendan Sullivan, 9-14, 79 yards, 8 carries for 41 rushing yards. Solid, efficient, and multi-dimensional, and that's what Iowa needs. Cade McNamara finished his day 7-13, 73 yards and a pick. Now, he didn't play very much, right? But they're actually throwing the ball a lot. If you think about it, he threw 13 balls in the first, less than 18 minutes of game time. That's interesting. They actually threw on a couple of first downs on, I believe, first drive of the game and then the second drive of the game. The initial play of each drive, they threw on first down. One of them was a play action. First one might have been play action. But I thought it was interesting. Tim Lester, a little bit less predictable on first downs, at least early. And we'll see how things change with a full week to prepare with Brendan Sullivan and a Wisconsin defense that's even better than what we saw that Wildcats team today. Before we get to our next caller, a reminder, if you want to call in, the number is 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601. And also want to take a moment to thank Brad Van Meter down at State Farm in Des Moines. Give him a call for a free insurance quote on whatever insurance you're in need of. Maybe it's homeowners, maybe it's a renter's insurance, maybe it's auto insurance, life insurance, or the like. Give him a call, 515-256-6480. That's 515-256-6480, or you can check out his website. It's www.bradvanmeter.com. Also want to thank Iowa Smokehouse. Great snacking, and you and me can share this game day tradition, because nothing better than pulling out some Iowa Smokehouse. You see their country-style bacon meat sticks there in the photo, but also their steak bites. They're delicious. Their salsa goes great with tortilla chips or whatever you like to snack on as it relates to chips, maybe some pita chips. And also they've got barbecue sauces and ketchup. So they got basically everything you need to pair with your bourbon, your beer, whatever. Visit them online at iowasmokehouse.com. You can have it shipped right to your doorstep. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off. Get your orders in now, folks. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. iowasmokehouse.com. This is a limited time offer. All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We have got Randy with us. Randy.
Hey, how are we doing?
Doing good, Randy. Good to see your face.
Yeah. So it was good to see the Hawkeyes use a different quarterback and going to Sullivan. It definitely made things easier for Caleb to run the ball, because it gave them something else to think about.
Absolutely. Just having a guy who, as I think it was James mentioned a little bit ago, just the rollout game, being able to, the Pascuzzi play. That's a play. Hey, Sullivan could have ran for 20 to 30 yards. Pascuzzi didn't look like he was going to get 40, but we saw the same thing on the goal line play. First touchdown of Brendan Sullivan's career. Remember the little flip to, I believe it was Luke Lachey. And those are just plays that Cade doesn't mean he's not trying to make. He just can't make. He's limited. And, I hate to go back to the old catchphrase of Brian Ferentz, Randy, but what's the upside? Well, the upside is a guy who's multi-dimensional and a dual threat. And they finally have that guy right now.
And I think it would be unfair to go back to Cade because next week if they went back to Cade, they'd boo us. The whole crowd would be booing him as soon as he went out there.
They were booing. I had Kyle, our good friend Kyle was at the game, and he told me they were booing in the pregame. They were booing in the starting line, which is unfortunate, right? You want to have Cade booed, but he was getting booed. Randy, you don't have a Cade print, do you?
I do.
You do have a Cade print. Why didn't I know that? We need to promote the Cade print, although right now might not be the best time.
Yeah, it's not the best time. Caleb Johnson's a good one to promote, though, because he's doing pretty good.
Caleb very easily could have been our player of the game as well. We've went with Caleb so much this year, but he was really good. Another game with 3 touchdowns on the ground, over 100 yards. How about the stiff arm on his first touchdown carry of the day? I'll tell you what, if Ashton Genty didn't exist, Caleb Johnson would be considered the best running back in the country.
He should be at least a second-team All-American by the time the season's over. At least by some services, anyway.
Think. Yeah, I mean, you got the kid down at Arizona State. You got Genty at Boise State. I know I'm missing somebody, but I guess I could pull up those stats. Of course, this week will not be logged yet, but let me pull up the rushing stats. Let's see, Cameron Ward leads the country in passing, and Genty leads the country with over 1,300 yards on the ground. Caleb heading into this week, Caleb with just over 1,000 yards. The kid from Rutgers, Kyle Manungai, he is just short of 1,000. And then Bryson Daly at Army, also up there. And actually, Cam, is it Skatibo from Arizona State, has slipped down. He's now at 8 in the country. But quite a gap, actually, between I don't know what Manungai did today, but heading into today, Genty and Caleb Johnson were the only 2 players in the country with over 1,000 yards. So those guys have separated themselves a little bit, but there is a gap, I think, between Caleb and Genty. Genty's just a freak.
Yeah, I haven't watched him yet, but it'd be nice to turn into one of his games. I had a stat that I heard on one of these other programs that I listened to, and it was a passing stat. What team has the longest distance since they've thrown a 300-yard passing game?
I think, somebody sent me that same stat. It's like 59?
59 games, and the next closest is like 20-something.
59 games since Iowa had a 300-yard passer. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yes.
Just to think about that. But you think about it's Iowa. We're kind of used to not having it. So when it's when a stat's right there in our face, it's like, oh man, that's terrible.
One stat that I'm a little bit surprised at, Randy, is I'm glancing at the stat sheet here. Not to say that it really means much, but I'm looking at Caleb Johnson's numbers. He only had 14 carries today.
It seemed like it was more.
Yeah, well, that might be a season low. Maybe game 1 he had less because he only played at 1 half, but that might be a season low for carries.
I don't think he carried the ball again fourth quarter. If he did, it was really early in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, let me throw up the yards for everybody. And they had taken care of business at that point. But Caleb Johnson, 14 attempts, $109, 3 touchdowns, also had 2 catches for 9 yards. But that's pretty efficient. That's 7.8 yards per rushing attempt.
Yeah, that'll get it done.
That'll get it done. Amen.
So, one of the commentators last week in the Michigan State game mentioned that Iowa has a problem on grass, that they tend to slip around on defense and not be able to tackle very well. And Michigan State has grass, and they brought out the Rose Bowl. At the Rose Bowl, they have natural grass, and they don't use the right cleats.
Well, the only pushback I would have to that if we're going to use anecdotal evidence for Andy, Iowa looked pretty good last year defensively against Iowa State, and Jack Trice is great.
And that was the Jack Trice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe there's something to that. I don't know if you heard this earlier. I mentioned this to Mark on our Tuesday show. Somebody brought up Michigan State's pants. Did you hear this?
Yeah, I heard you talking about that.
Michigan State's pants were different. They were slick pants.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Somebody wearing slick pants.
Trying to catch a grease pig or something.
I guess. Yeah, that might be what it is. So,
all right, that was a good game. Get them next week.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, I'll be
Another
at that
win
one
next week. Okay. Well, Iowa can. Let's see. They'll get to bowl eligibility with a win against Wisconsin. So it'd be a good one. Get the pig
All
and
right.
Or not the pig. Get the bowl. Is it a bowl? What is it? It's a bowl.
It's a bowl.
Right?
Yeah, it's a bowl.
All right.
Yep.
Randy,
All
appreciate
right.
your support and your call. Appreciate you calling in.
Yep. Go Hawks.
Thank you, sir. Caleb Johnson, 14 carries, 109 on the ground, 3 big ones, and had 2 catches also through the air, 9 yards. And Iowa sharing the ball today. How about this? Jacob Gill had 3 catches, Dayton Howard with a catch, Johnson had 2, Ortworth had 3, Bowie had 1, Lachey had 3, Pascuzzi had 1, Anderson had 2. So pretty good. Even with Vanderzee out, Caleb Brown's now a memory. And I'd like to see Gill. I don't know if they're keying in on Gill, but 3 catches, 6 yards is not enough. He is too reliant. He showed himself to be much better than that early on in the year. I don't know how many targets he had. I'm awaiting the official box score. We'll get that here in just a second. While we await that, and I believe we've got no, we don't have Coach Patterson here yet. We do have a super chat from. Is this okay? I'm not reading this, but Brendan Sullivan, thank you for the $2 super chat, which YouTube will take 65% of. I'm sorry, 35%, right? 35%, something like that. But we do appreciate the $1.35. And also a super chat here from Jared. MSU kicker just missed a 20-yard field goal. Hey, those angles can be difficult on short kicks, Jared. Just remember that. Mason Richmond, how about you give me my flowers, hater? I'm assuming there's an easy way to switch usernames because there's no way you created separate accounts for Brendan and for Mason. But thank you for the super chat nonetheless. All right, let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. Let's see. OS for Hawks, you are in our chat and you want to get on, I believe. You're on StreamYard. Your device is not connected, so I can't go to you until your device is connected. So let's get that figured out. The phone line is open, 515-635-1601. That's 515-635-1601, or you can call in via StreamYard, and it looks like OS for Hawks is looking to get his issue fixed. I'll post the StreamYard link in our live chat as well. There is that. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got another Corey, not the Corey that gets on people's nerves because he is a big Kirk fan. I think, Corey, you're a Kirk fan as well. But,
a little bit.
We all spell our names correctly. I guess that's the best. Your name is. I don't want to remove you. Your name is spelled correctly as well. So thanks for calling into the show.
I'm back. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. You're usually calling in for basketball.
Yeah, I usually have more off time during basketball season, and this fall's been busy as of again. But it was nice to see good old Kirk complimentary football today. I like the effort from everybody all around. Special teams, defense, offense made some clicks at certain times. So,
what do you think about this comment from Garth? He says after the game, Kirk gave no credit to Sullivan. So I watched the post-game interview. And
I didn't watch it, so
I did watch the post-game interview on Big Ten Network. I wouldn't say he gave no credit to Sullivan, but it was brought up, and Kirk quickly took the moment to give credit to his defense. And he's right to do so.
Yeah.
But I understand why people are going to jump on that because they feel like Kirk is going to go out of his way to protect the guy that he initially thought was the best option.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't care. As long as the best guy's playing right now, like as long as Brendan keeps playing, I don't care. Like I say, if Kirk wants to make up some story about how, Brendan's cleats were shipped in this week from Honolulu, and that's why he was able to play. That's fine. But as long as the best guy's playing, especially against this team coming up next week, I'm fine.
Yeah. No, I think the script really flipped in the game when you see Sullivan out there running ahead for his tight end. And I think that's just, as far as energy, like a flip script, like I think once the team kind of saw that, of like they kind of rallied around him. And I think from then on it was, I mean, the ships had sailed there as far as like, I think who they want their guy to be. I think they really rallied around him today, and he didn't have to be Superman. He just
for the record, I said this earlier in the week. There was a reason why I had made the comment heading into this game that I thought there was a good chance Brendan played in the first half. I was told on Sunday that by the time that Michigan State game was over, there was a large group representation within this roster, within this team, that wanted Sullivan to play, Sullivan to get his shot. And I was even told, given indicators that caused me to believe that Tim Lester also wanted Brendan Sullivan. So I think this was all planned out, and the nail in the coffin were two throws, one of which got overturned, but
it was the
two.
Well. Yeah.
Those were just horrid throws.
The pick was the nail in the coffin.
The pick six.
The pick six. The pick six was.
You just can't. I mean, Mike is absolutely right. I mean, Kirk, I'm sure, looked at. I mean, you can't give up points. I mean, that's one thing to turn the ball over, but when you're giving up points, I mean, you're down 7-3. That defense didn't give up anything, and they trailed. They trailed midway through the second quarter because Cade threw an inexplicable pick six right after Quinn Schulte had created an interception himself. For the Iowa offense. It was incredible, the series of events there, but they recovered from it. Like I say, credit to Reese Dakin because he was phenomenal. The punt coverage team, all that.
I would say that he's arguably the reason they kept themselves even within shouting distance during that first half. Was him with those crucial punts. I mean, just keeping them even, just flipping that field position and forcing Northwestern to be, I don't know, I guess more predictable to play against down on that side of the field. But I say it was just, I don't know about you, but back when I played football, if I saw my quarterback out there running ahead of somebody, making blocks, fired me up, when I was playing. So seeing my quarterback play hard was going to make me want to. So I feel like they really rallied around Sullivan today. And I am intrigued to see what they will do going forward. Given, hopefully they give Sullivan enough of a leash to make a few mistakes, because I think there will be mistakes. But I'm curious to see against Wisconsin, tougher competition, in a certain type of environment, make those plays. Uh-oh, I think we lost him. Or they lost me. One of the two. Well, I'm running the show now.
All right, so
I'm not that. I don't need. Yeah, I'm host now. New Corey's in. Get this guy out of here.
That would only happen if there was somebody named Corey that could run the show. So I'm glad you were here. I hope you didn't do anything stupid while you had your 5 seconds of fame.
I say, what's that Mission Impossible? Or James Bond?
So, full disclosure, we've been having some equipment issues over the last 10 days. Working through it, it's one of those things. It looks like you're a tech guy. You've got your
a little
headphones,
bit.
And it's very hard. You know this. It's just like working on a car. When you have intermittent issues that come and go, it's almost impossible to diagnose. And when you do a 3-hour show, we were good for the first 40 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom. Lightning strikes. Very, very maddening. So people just need to be. I plead with people to be patient because there's not a whole lot.
It's not. Once stuff starts going wrong, it hardly ever gets fixed in a day. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, no, good stuff. I appreciate you calling in, Corey, and I think the bottom line is I agree with you. I heard what you said about the leash. Speaking of leashes, your dog has grown big. Perky, right?
Hawk.
That's right.
Yeah, he's a year old now.
And
80 pounds.
German Shepherd Collie mix.
Yeah, come on, buddy. Come
Am
on.
I right on that?
Yeah,
German Shepherd Collie mix.
yeah. I don't want to pick out now because he's kind of huge, but
Yeah.
he's helped me cheer on the Hawks today. So
Beautiful dog. Well, good stuff, Corey. Appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you. If we don't talk to you again for football, we'll definitely have basketball.
Definitely basketball season. I'll try to get one of the maybe the Nebraska. I don't know. These next 2 weekends are crazy for me. So.
Yep, absolutely. Well, don't overwork. We'll talk to you very soon, regardless, Corey. Appreciate the call.
Good to see you, Corey. Bye.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got OS for Hawks, who I believe has gotten his issues figured out. You're not the only one who's having some problems, OS for Hawks. So,
can you hear me fine? Yeah,
I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of these people. I am a little bit of a tech guy, and I hate Microsoft updates on the computers because they always mess with your audio. So for some reason, my browser decided that had to block my microphone for StreamYards for whatever reason. I don't know.
I hate Microsoft in general. So
it just took me a half second to figure out what was going on. So, but I got it figured out. A couple things. One thing that I wanted to bring up that I haven't heard anybody else bring up today was I think Castro being back in the lineup made a huge difference for the defense. Now, did he make a bunch of great plays? No, but I think him being in the lineup allows them to play better. I don't know.
Well, he's one of their better players. I mean,
right.
Not to oversimplify it, but he's just one of their better players. I thought Jamari played phenomenal as well. Talking about the defensive backfield that struggled last week, I thought that defensive backfield was great today, and it's easy to say that when you give up nothing, but
I guess what I'm getting at is I think Castro being in the game helps the back end quite a bit, and I think that's part of the reason maybe why they struggled last week. I have to say I'm going to jump on the bandwagon with everybody else and say that I think moving forward, Sullivan has to be the starter from what happened in the game. And I also agree with everything you said about Sullivan adds that one extra dimension that makes our opposing teams have to play different on defense. Cade doesn't have that dimension that he can go and take off and hurt you on yardage or go off and run and get a first down or run that, quarterback draw, and beat you for a lot of yards. So I think that makes a difference, and I think that will make a difference going forward with the passing game. I had a note here, and I just wanted to kind of make a funny thing, guys. Cade, when he threw the almost interception and he got the flag, or he got the roughing the passer call, the thing that came to my mind as I was thinking about that ball floating up there in the air and wobbling around, I thought, it is the opening of pheasant season today in Iowa, and that maybe looked like a rooster flushing up there as it was.
Is it really the opening?
Yes, it's the opening day of pheasant season in the state of Iowa today. So anyway, that just came to mind. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That thing, the way that came off his hand,
it was bad.
It looked like he got hit, but he didn't get hit. He got hit after the throw.
Yeah, it was horrendous. There's no doubt about it. I also thought that the actual interception that Cade threw for the pick six, he forced the ball. That was not a good decision. I also agreed with the other people is the throw to Anderson for the long game. I agree with I don't know who said it earlier. If that ball had been dropped in, that could have been a touchdown rather than laying out. Anyway, the other thing that I also wanted to mention was that I don't know if this is Lester or what. And part of it maybe is because in the past our tight ends have been so featured in the offense. We just don't seem to get the ball to the tight ends as much. Now I know what Lachey got 3 touches, and Spascucci got one, and
40 yarder.
Yeah, and who's the other guy? I know he got
Fort
2 or 3. Yeah,
Fort Worth, and
Fort
keep
Worth,
in
that's
mind,
right.
a
So I
string
guess
was
I'm wrong there. They
well.
got the majority of the
Don't
touches.
forget, Stringa was getting a lot of targets before he went down.
Yeah.
So, and he's out right
Did he?
now.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
So,
Then the other, that's KJ on the second touchdown. I just had one thing in there. Is that there was besides the pancake block, there was another nice block by the ref downfield when Kate had that second touchdown run.
yeah.
And
I was going to mention one other thing. Hayden Large is also out. So, just a note about the tight ends. What do they call them? H-backs or whatever they're called.
Right. And the only other thing I was going to talk about that too, and I know that's been brought up, but I did see on social media, there's a post on social media, and I won't say exactly what, but said that Cade had slightly tweaked a knee and he was hurt. And then after the game, Ferentz did say, just like everybody else, as Ferentz said, they asked about Cade being out, and he said Cade was injured. So he did say it. Anyway.
Right. No, that's I wish Cade the best from a physical standpoint.
And then the only last thing that I had was I was going to say before you called it, I thought the Dakin should have been the player of the game too. So I'm sorry, it hurts my soul that I have to agree with you, Corey, on that.
Yeah,
one.
I know.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Well, appreciate those words.
Yeah.
The Cade thing is very interesting. That's what I'll say. That's all.
I won't take any more of your time. Another time when I'm on, remind me, and I will tell you I have a nice golf joke.
Okay.
And I will tell you the golf joke, but I don't want to take away other people's times just to tell you.
Save that one for when Kyle, Don, and I are together.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd save it for especially when Don's around. So it's a nice joke and it's golf related. So anyway, you guys have a great evening. Go Hawks. We'll talk to you again.
Appreciate it, sir. Pete, thank you for the super chat. Pete says, play I enjoyed the most was Sully blocking way out in front, aka or a la Nate Stanley. Yeah, the Nate Stanley play Pete's referring to would have been the Nebraska game 2019. I believe it was 2019 where Amir Smith-Marset took an end around, and I believe it was an end around, and ended up scoring. And Nate Stanley was out in front on the play. I think, again, I had to go back and look at the highlights, but appreciate the super chat, Pete. Do appreciate that. And looks like we have both Coach Don Patterson and Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com waiting in our queue. So we will take a quick 60-second break, and we'll be back with both Coach Patterson and Tom Kakert, fresh off Kirk Ferentz's media availability post-game following Iowa's 40-14 win against the Northwestern Wildcats. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Do you ever ask yourself, how would my life be different if I had made different choices? Would I be happier? More wealthy? Here's a humorous novel that explores that question, venturing back to that magical time in the early 90s when grunge was taking over big hair bands. It was just when our hero, Amy Gare, began to face the real world. You Hawkeye fans just might enjoy the setting as well. Goodbye Def Leppard, I'll Miss Those Jeans by Steph Kramer can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers. If you need a better quality snack, and who doesn't for game day or any day, we've got we're full board ahead on NFL football. Now college basketball's back, college football, a lot of season left, folks. Get your snacking products from Iowa Smokehouse, their steak bites, their meat sticks, their barbecue sauces, their ketchups. Everything is tasty, and no wonder their slogan is tasting is believing. See how that's the case over at iowasmokehouse.com, and use that code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. This is a limited time offer. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. Get it sent right to your doorstep. All right. Well, the time has come for us to welcome Coach Don Patterson to the show. Coach, good to see you.
Good to see you, Corey.
I'm guessing you're all fed, you're watered, you're good to go.
Yeah, I apologize for the delay. We had a little difficulty. Lisa and Mia, her sister, left the game a little bit early, and they came back to pick me up. We didn't realize they blocked off a lot of traffic back toward the stadium, and she simply couldn't get through the barricades. But we finally got it worked out.
Not a problem at all. And we're going to get to your reaction following this one. We've been talking for the last hour plus regarding this victory, and we're going to get some insight from Tom Kager to HawkeyeReport.com. So we'll start with Tom. Tom, welcome. Fresh
Good.
off Kirk Ferentz's media availability. You're safe back in the press box, it looks like. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I'm having a little computer issue getting logged in, so hopefully I'm audio available.
You are loud and clear, and everybody's having problems tonight. So about 10 minutes ago, something went wrong with my technology. Everything shut down, so we had a caller who was hosting the show for like 20 seconds.
Wow. For some reason, StreamYard doesn't like me anymore. I don't know what happened, but we're good.
They're not used to all these 40-point performances for Iowa, so maybe that's what it is. But Tom, you just got done talking with Coach Ferentz, and obviously I'm sure there were a number of questions about the quarterback position, but I want to start with the defense, because coming off a performance very un-Phil Parker-like at Michigan State, first drive today there were moments where I was like, well, the guys are open. They're going down the field. I thought it was an odd decision to kick a 50-yard field goal personally, especially with a guy who sounds like the backup kicker, their punter.
Yeah, he's their punter. He's their punter and their backup kicker, because their kicker's hurt.
Now, Don will tell you a story about a young man who was a former kicker that could kick field goals pretty well, who ended up being I believe Mike Cyphers, right? That's who you'd bring up, Don?
Correct.
Who could do both. But I thought it was a weird decision. Nevertheless, the defense really didn't miss a beat after that. They were just phenomenal. What did Kirk say about Phil's unit and how they bounced back?
Yeah, just that he expected them to play good. They just played good. It was fun in the postgame because usually we do individual interviews, and Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson decided to do their interview together. So they were talking a lot about the big plays and how the early in the week they had worked on some tackling and just it's attention to detail, and I knew they would come out and play great today. They're locked in. They played terrific after that first drive. They really shut them down and played dominant football pretty much the rest of the way. In fact, I joked with Quinn Schulte, I asked him if they consider this a shutout, and they said no, because the only points were a Cade McNamara pick six and a punt return. The defense didn't give up any points.
And ironically enough, that came right after an interception for the Iowa defense. So really can't blame the defense for those 7 points.
Yep.
So there's a theme going on in our live chat, and maybe it's because I prompted this early. I'm in no way trying to imply that I think Cade McNamara is not dinged up. What I will say is there are people, Tom, and you can already anticipate this, there are people that are going to look at this situation, because it sounds like Kirk made a comment about Cade tweaking something in his knee. Is that accurate?
He did not. There was no nothing about the knee in his post game. He said he got dinged up, knocked around. I think it was on the big hit where they got the personal foul. And I think that's what he was talking. That's what he's talking about. He never mentioned anything about the knee, and Cade was not moving around like a knee thing. It seemed like, and Kirk also said in the post game that they had planned on playing Brendan. They were like, the fourth series, and I don't know if that's what it equated to. I haven't even looked back on the play-by-play to see if it was the fourth series when they brought him in, but it seemed like that was something they were, based on what Kirk said, they were planning on putting Brendan Sullivan in the game at some point and doing some sort of like, hey, we're going to get him a couple series and see how that goes. But then with Cade dinged up, according to Kirk, they just, wrote it because, Brendan's first three series weren't anything to write home about. There was 3 and out in those first 3 series. And then that last one before the half, netted them a touchdown, and then they just took off with everybody doing a little bit of everything in the third quarter and the 28 points that they scored.
I guess my point, somebody did mention in the chat that Kirk said something about a knee. So thank you for clarifying that he did not make a comment about knee, but he did make a comment that he was dinged up. So I guess the theme from people is
he hinted, let me just say, he hinted it was more head than knee, that maybe he got his bell rung kind of thing.
Right.
So,
well, there's going to be people, Tom, that just basically are saying they're going to call his bull crap on that and say, he's not dinged up. That's just Kirk trying to protect Cade. And I'm not saying
there were people in the press box doing that. Not me.
Okay. So, I mean, I thought it was a little, remember 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago at Northwestern when Spencer Petras was pulled for Alex Padilla? That was at Northwestern, and the same thing happened, right? Petras was out with an injury, but was playing poorly, and people had wanted a quarterback change. I think different situation here was that you have a much more seasoned guy who I have no doubt in what you just said, Tom, that they had planned to play him. I think they're Kirk's being 100% honest in that. I thought go Tuesday gave indicators of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I thought that they were going to probably do something like this. They came close to flipping the switch on things last week, I think, to get him out there in the second half. But then the offense did fairly well. I mean, it scored 20 points in the second half last week. So, but it was just real apparent that something needed. I mean, it was going to start getting messy, I think would be the right word, with the crowd kind of turning on Cade gradually. And then I think after that interception, even though he got hit, there are some that saying, well, it was still a lousy throw. He got hit later after the ball was out of his hands. I don't know. It didn't look good. And then, but I thought it was interesting. We talked to Caleb Johnson, just got done talking to him. And based on what he said, he basically said the offense is different with Brendan in there, and things kind of opened up more for him when Brendan's in there. And I'd agree with that. I mean, because they have to adjust defensively. But Brendan kind of hinted that he didn't know if that was the case or not. But hearing Caleb say that kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Do
you think Caleb gets reprimanded for saying that?
No. I think he's just being honest. Well, that it just and Kirk, you have to understand Kirk Ferentz speak, but I think Kirk was kind of saying that Brendan's going to be the starter next week. That we're gonna see him out there.
I just can't imagine that not being the case. But
it would be interesting to get the crowd reaction next week if 12 trotted out there instead of 1.
I don't think you can do that.
Don gave me a funny look.
Don, throw your head in the ring.
I have no idea what that reaction would be.
Don, do you have anything?
Would it look like the Texas game last week, Don?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it's a couple of 5 stars, but nevertheless, Don, anything for Tom specifically from the presser? I know you and I have not really had much time to go.
I have some injury updates too. So. Sure. Reese Vanderzee, it looks like an ankle sprain. It looks like he's probably going to be out a bit. It seems like nothing for sure, but Lachey went out too but he could have went in a pinch. So I don't know that that's going to be long-term. Kyler Fisher was sick. They think he'll get back Monday. I see somebody asking about Lachey at halftime. It sounds like he's going to be okay, but they could have went to him in emergency. And who else were we missing today? Nestor has soft tissue.
What's the latest on Bo Stevens?
Bo Stevens, I walked by me. He's got some sort of brace on his ankle. So you can see it under his sock. The ankle looks significantly different. So, but he was moving okay. He was walking okay. So I think he's closer. But I don't know that he's going to be back next week. And Ostrenga is still in a sling. So they won't obviously tell us exactly what Ostrenga is, but I'm going to guess he's got a broken collarbone. and that's going to take 4 to 6 to heal, probably, depending on how you heal.
Yeah, somebody was asking about tight end involvement a little bit ago, and Addison Estringa was taking a lot of targets away from other people through the first month of the season. So
yeah,
and then is Hayden Large healthy, Tom?
He's been dinged up. So I think he's back and forth on things. They brought him back and then he went back out again, and so we'll see with him. But Johnny Pascuzzi, how about that play today? There's your play of the day. Almost got in the end zone.
I don't know what's more impressive, Pascuzzi making the play or the heads up play by Brendan to flip it off to him and then run to go block for his tight end. So
yeah,
great. It's a guy who's paid his dues, right, Tom?
Sure.
Somewhere
He
else.
was in the portal.
Yeah,
he was in the portal at one time. So
came back. So absolutely. Don, anything for Tom before we let him slide?
Can't think of a thing right now.
All right, Coach.
Well, Tom.
Good to see you, Tom.
You too, Coach.
Enjoy your time staying put in Iowa over the next week. You'll get. We don't have anything. You get to. Are you covering the women's exhibition on Wednesday?
No, Kyle Huseman will be covering that. So I'll be.
Kyle will do a phenomenal job, and you'll get to stay put until next Saturday, right?
I'll get. And I kind of wonder if it's going to be a night game. I kind of think it might be. So.
I was.
Go ahead.
I was told from a pretty good source heading into this game was that if both Wisconsin and Iowa won, it would be a 6:30 game. I don't know what will happen if Wisconsin loses, and I don't even know, is that game going? I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, they were. I don't know what the score is. I know at one point it was 3-0 Wisconsin, but I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, 7-3. Penn State leads Wisconsin second quarter. So we'll keep an eye on it, and I'm assuming the Big Ten will announce that tonight, if not tonight, tomorrow. Right?
Yeah, tomorrow at the latest. Tomorrow at the latest.
Tom,
hey, thanks, guys.
Follow Tom over at Hawkeye Report. Thank you, Tom. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, sir. Tom Caker, HawkeyeReport.com, on3.com. All right. Don, where do we start? Lots to get to. Quarterback change. Caden Weegen's return. The very strange Jay Higgins interception. I'll let you choose where to start. I'm assuming you want to start with quarterback.
No, actually, I would not.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, Corey. I was in practice on Wednesday, and typically I'll run into a few players as the practice ends, and I just talk to them randomly. And two of the players I happen to talk to, I want to tell you about the conversation now. One of them was Quinn Schulte. And here's what I said to Quinn. I said, Quinn, I'm sorry about Saturday night because I know you have good hands. And I'm going to predict right now, that'll be the last potential interception you'll ever drop as a Hawkeye player. He said, thanks, Coach. That means a lot. I appreciate it. And I said, well, I hope they throw your way a lot. I hope you get your hands on a lot of opposing passes because I don't think you're going to drop a single one. And when you know it today, he made a great play for an INT.
Yes, he did.
And I was so happy to see that. And then one of the other guys I talked to, just an odd coincidence, but I talked to a punt returner. And I said, Ken, you're doing all the right things. Just keep the faith because it is only a matter of time before you bust one. And he said, well, that's how I feel too, Coach. And I said, okay, continue with what you've been doing because you're doing all the right things. I did talk to him about if he feels hemmed in on a sideline, give thought to putting his foot in the ground and clearing back toward the middle of the field. And I reminded him that Tim DeWhite used to do it that way sometimes. And he smiled and he didn't mind at all trying to be like Tim DeWhite. I think he really looks up to Tim as he should. And how appropriate that just a few days later, 3 days later, he hits his first return for a touchdown. So I don't want to take credit for either one of those, but it's just kind of ironic that I talked to both of them on Wednesday and they shone brightly on Saturday.
Yeah, good stuff from both those guys. And that was a fun. I mean, the Caden Weegen return, Don, I just thought It's one thing to be able to highlight speed, but we've talked about this. Returning punts is a different skill than returning kicks. They're two totally separate skills, but we saw his speed on that punt return. Am I right? I mean, he just busted through when he had a chance.
Yes. And it appears to me if he wanted to become a tightrope walker, he'd be good at that too, because he did a great job of staying in bounds as he went down the sideline.
Yeah. Good stuff. Don, I want to run through some notes. Usually we don't get to notes, at least some of my notes, toward the tail end. So this will be at least an opportunity to do that. So let me just run through a couple of comments. We'll start with the first quarter. I think I mentioned it when Tom was here. Did you find it odd that, Northwestern's moving the ball effectively to start the game? They get 4th and 2, and typically an area where you may decide to go for it. And I know points are going to be at a premium against Iowa typically. I just thought it was odd to bring your punter in to kick a 50-yard field goal. The kick was nowhere close to going in. Did you find that decision to be a little weird?
Yes. And let's face it, I don't know what kind of range he has, but obviously doesn't have great range. He is the backup kicker. What would make more sense to me is exactly what we did to them. Why don't you go ahead and push punt and down and inside the 10 and play the field position game? That makes more sense than missing a long field goal.
Right.
Or another option, of course, simply going for it on 4th and 2.
Yeah.
But
and
again,
then not long after that, you have Iowa. I thought Tim Lester came out early, attacking through the air. We saw a couple of first down throws, which we don't see a lot of. We see a lot of rush plays on first down.
More aggressive play calling to start the game.
More aggressive play calling, and Seth Anderson, tremendous leaping grab, explosive play. How long did that play go for, Don? The leaping grab up the middle of the field.
42, as I recall.
So super explosive play. And the only thing I would say is if Cade hits him in rhythm and it hits him in stride, that's a touchdown. Is that fair?
Yeah, had to leave his feet to catch it. He couldn't just run under it, as I recall. It was a diving catch, right?
Yes. And then Cade followed it up with another, I'd say, poor throw in the end zone where Seth had to lay out again, nearly got his toe down, but did not. Iowa ends up settling for a field goal. And that kind of summed up Cade's first quarter, I thought. The plays were there to be made, but he just made some poor decisions and really bad interception. The interception that got taken away by the phantom roughing the passer, I thought it was a bad roughing the passer call. I thought Anthony Herron felt the same way on the Big Ten Network broadcast, Don, because the call was roughing. It was not differentiated that he drove the quarterback into the turf. It was just roughing, which would give the impression that it's a late hit on the quarterback.
Tell me this, Corey. Was the ball out of his hands before contact was made?
Yes.
If so, it was a horrible throw, of course.
Listen, I need you to go back and watch those plays because I'm telling you this, on both of his interceptions, he was only credited with one interception because the one was brought back. Don, neither one of those plays was Cade using laces. And I say that not because, we haven't made a big deal of that on here. We've talked about the laces thing, but on that first play, that first interception, which was taken back due to the roughing the passer penalty, you can clearly see as Cade throws, the ball just slipped out of his hands. The ball just slipped out of his hands and went, I don't know how far up in the air, and you knew it was going to be picked. But it sure looked to me like that was somebody that didn't have control of the football with his hands because he was not using the laces. I mean, I know he's been doing this apparently for a long time, and we just recently noticed, but is this laces thing? Should we be talking more about that with Cade?
Well, there are some guys that do throw without the laces, but and I don't know what the numbers say, but my best guess is most quarterbacks find the laces and throw with their fingers across the laces. I think that's what most quarterbacks do.
What percentage of the quarterbacks that you coached threw without laces? How many?
I don't know, maybe 100%. Oh, I'm
With
sorry,
the-
you said without. Zero.
Yeah, without. So you had no quarterbacks that you can recall that made it a habit of throwing without the laces. I'm not talking about a quick boom, boom, like quick throw where you don't need to have the laces, but he's routinely doing this, Don.
Well, we were more in the center back in those days. And of course, the center puts the ball up so that it is in position for the quarterback to have his throwing hand with his fingers across the laces. But even in the gun, quarterbacks that I coached, there were a few throws, as you mentioned, catch throw. Obviously, you don't have time to find the laces. Catch throw, you practice it.
Right.
These
Absolutely.
are simple high percentage throws where the ball has to come out right now. And in that regard, it wasn't much of an issue. But in general, quarterbacks that I coached found the laces. Even if they were in the gun or in the pistol, they found the laces. As they were surveying the field, they found the laces. They just, without thinking, just spin the ball so that it's in the right position.
Sort of like a lot of basketball players, 3-point shooters, they find, I don't even know what you call them. I've been playing basketball my whole life.
Seam of the ball, I
The
guess.
seam- They find the seams of the basketball oftentimes, not always, but yeah, you go back and watch that play, Don. It was not a hit that caused the erroneous throw.
We were like it.
The ball just slipped out of his hand as he's trying to throw. And then how about the second interception for Cade? You know, it probably wasn't a good decision to throw it to Lachey, but on top of it, he threw it to the wrong side. He threw it. The placement of his throw was poor.
Well, you've heard me talk about never ever telegraphing your throw. He stared Lachey down. He threw the ball late where he threw it, and of course, not entirely accurate. And the defender had obviously anticipated the throw too, and made a nice play on the ball. No better play than what Shorty made against Northwestern, of course. And the sad part of that one, of course, it went to the house. It went 75 yards or whatnot. But it's rare when a team scores 14 points and yet the opposing defense didn't give up any of them. But that's what we had on this day: a punt return and an interception return. Offense had 0. Specialists had 6, and I guess ST had 8, right? They had both the ATs plus the punt return.
Don, do you want to guess who our RTI Threads player of the game is?
Well, I haven't seen all the stats, so you better not say Sullivan, because then you're really declaring your loyalties.
I'm declaring my what if I say Sullivan, Don?
Your loyalty.
Loyalty? No, it's not Sullivan. There were some people that wanted me to make the player of the game be Sullivan. No, who do you think it actually is?
Well, again, I haven't seen the numbers.
It's not Caleb.
Okay. Oh, it's Wiggin.
No, it's not.
Why not? Should be.
I will debate you on that, Don.
He had 4 punt returns for 111 yards. He had 3 kickoff returns for 65 yards.
One of those punt returns was an 85-yarder, so I don't want to hear about the 111 yards.
Okay, you got me there.
But we can talk. You want to talk about impact? Let's talk about our player of the game, Reese Dakin.
Good choice.
Good choice?
Yeah, absolutely a good choice. Correct me if I'm wrong, those inside the 10, they might have been on consecutive possessions.
Yes, they were.
4 in a row.
You know what actually happened, Don, is I'm going through the play-by-play, trying to solidify who our player of the game is. I'm tracking these punts, and I actually had to keep going back, and I'm like, am I looking at the same play over and over and over again? Because every one, Northwestern 6, Northwestern 6, Northwestern 6, and then he punted to the Northwestern 5. Those were 4 straight punts. 6, 6, 6, 5. That's impressive stuff, Don.
The reason I'm smiling, I flashed back on a game. We were playing at Illinois State, and they had the win, and we were pinned up maybe 3 times in a row, I think, something like that. And I said, not anymore. And I believe we were on the -2. And you know what happened? On first down, play action pass, 98 yards. Might have been 99. I think it was 98. But I said, I'm sick of this lousy field position. We're going to change it on one play. And the play went all the way for a touchdown to Marco Thomas, an outstanding receiver. Kind of gutsy to throw play action out of your end zone, but let's face it, they're not expecting it, especially on first down.
Reese Dakin, our player of the game, 4 punts inside the 10-yard line, 3 of which landed at the 6. 1 was down at the 5. And then he also had 2 50-plus yard punts. Did have 2 that were around 44, 45 yards. And I will say his one bugaboo, Don, I thought the punt return for a touchdown, not enough hang time on that one. And I think he would probably say the same thing.
I couldn't help but notice for some reason, even though he had a long field, for some reason he did not spin the ball that time. Go back and look. It was an end over end kick. It didn't have quite as good a hang as most of them normally do. And as you know, Corey, those without hang time sometimes come back at you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was his one slip up, and it was almost covered, but it was just a little too short a hang time from my perspective. And I'm guessing he would say the same thing. But boy, he's improved, Don, hasn't he? As the season has went on, he's really matured quickly.
Nice punts. I remember the one that was 44. That was after the touchdown return. 44 yards, but with excellent hang time.
Absolutely. And he's a freshman. I mean, he's going to get better. He's going to be here 4 years, assuming nothing happens. So before we get to our next caller, I mentioned RTI Threads. They're sponsoring our player of the game once again here on the show. And if you have not checked out the NIL apparel over at rtithreads.com, this is their website, and you just click on this NIL athletes tab up here, and you can browse the official player merch for guys like Owen Freeman, Jacob Gill, Aaron Graves, Peyton Sandfort, Swarm Baseball, Carson Shire. Click on any of these logos and you'll find the official merchandise, both apparel and non-apparel merch for all of these players. Check it all out, customize, and find a great gift for you and your entire family of Hawkeyes. Check it all out at rtithreads.com. Click on NIL athletes. Again, that's rtithreads.com. All right, let's go to our next caller, our favorite person, our favorite loyal Kirk supporter, the other Corey. You're like the 4th Corey that's been on the show today, Corey. Hey, I gave you credit. Listen, buddy boy, I gave you credit earlier because you spell your name correctly. All the Corys that call into this name, they spell their names right.
Yeah, no, I work remote, and back at the headquarters, I've got a woman that never met me that thought I was a woman, thought I was a female based on the way I spell my name. And I quickly corrected her. I said, no, I spell my name the correct way. I feel for those sorry souls that have to live with that E stuck in between that's just another English quirk. Why they'd stuff a useless silent vowel in there. It's pointless. So I think that we're off on our player of the game. I think that the key turning
What a surprise.
The key turning point in that game was Cade becoming injured. So I think it's high time that we give Cade credit for taking one for the team. He got slammed to the ground. It gave us a penalty, and then it gave a more comfortable environment for Ferentz to kind of move the new QB1 into place. I think otherwise, Kirk maybe wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. And even when he was asked in the press conference, Kirk said, well, it wasn't that I benched Cade. It was that we were we were wanting to bring Brendan in. He's been proving himself, and we wanted to give him an opportunity. And we were thinking about doing it last week, but then the second half we started scoring points, so we didn't do that. So no, enough of the sarcasm, but in all seriousness, it's just really fun to think about the possibilities with Sullivan and Don as a play caller. And you went to a practice. I mean, I've seen some highlights on Sullivan in the past with Northwestern. He can spin the ball. People were talking somewhat like he can run it, but he can't throw it as well. I've seen some highlight tape that shows some nice deep balls. What'd you see in practice out of Sullivan when you were there?
Well, I think he certainly is an adequate passer, maybe more than that even, but at the very least, he's adequate. And you heard me say a while back, 1 week ago, the frustration we had, Cade, in part because of his injuries, cannot give us an added dimension to the offense with QB run. But at the very least, Cade needs to be able to make a lot of routine throws. And as you know, Corey, we didn't get that done either. So I have at least as much confidence right now in Brendan as I do Cade for making all those routine throws. I think, and of course, that doesn't require a lot of arm strength. Just requires good accuracy, good receiver selection. And I think he's demonstrated he can do that. Not to mention, anyone will tell you it's more complicated when the quarterback is a threat to run. And even if he's not designed with a run play, he still can extend plays. And oftentimes he has a chance to turn something that appeared to be headed for nothing, to turn it into something, to salvage a bad play. Today you saw it when he pulled the ball down and running not for a lot of yards, but he didn't get tackled for minus yardage either. Oftentimes he extended the yardage down the field, and that gave us an easier down to work with on the next snap.
It's hardly a comparison as far as body types, but it felt a lot like watching a Drew Tate back there when he was trying to elude the rush. And he doesn't just run for his life. He creates space where he can then set himself and make a throw with his feet planted. He can reset once he buys enough space. And
where's this all coming from? Weren't you last week, Corey? I got to call you out. Weren't you last week telling us that we were, you're smiling because you know I'm right. You were calling us out for wanting Cade benched.
No. Do you remember?
Yes.
Okay, so it
must have been some other Corey.
Explain.
Some other Corey called in.
Don,
some other Corey
so
from
many Corys that call in here. I think he's
That's
confused.
true. That's true.
No, really, honestly, I called you out, Corey, 2 weeks ago. I said, you've kind of been backing Cade more so than you had in the past. You were kind of backing Cade a little bit.
All I've said, listen, can I just say, all I have said about Cade, because I saw somebody else in the chat earlier today made the same statement. All I've said about Cade is when he's played well, I've said he's played well. I thought he played well at Minnesota, but he's not played well. He didn't play well against Washington. That's the other thing. And I said that. They won by 24 against Washington. And I remember going to the postgame saying he didn't play very well. He didn't play well.
We were the beneficiary of a lot of good field position that game, you might recall.
And the defense gave up a lot of yards in that game, but stepped up at critical times, unlike what they did in the second half last week against Michigan State. So anyways, I said heading into this game, I was ready to pull the plug on Cade.
Oh, for sure. And you called it exactly. I mean, you said, I would expect after the first quarter, we may see, if Cade doesn't start off well, we may see Brendan. And I mean, that was spot on. And Don, wouldn't you say that with the Tim Lester offense, there's a significant gain in having a mobile quarterback in this offense?
Yes.
Especially when you consider the RPO, you know, in order to make that a threat, you've got to have a mobile quarterback. Otherwise, it's a useless fake. I mean,
Well, just in general, of course, they have to defend the possibility that the quarterback keeps the ball
yeah.
all the time. For that matter, another advantage you saw today, Corey, just because you're in one back offense, I'm saying in the backfield, you have a running back and a quarterback. Well, if he's a quarterback with the ability to run, you can run all kinds of two-back offense, even though you're in one-back formation. Who says that the running back can't become a lead blocker for the quarterback? You saw that today.
Real quick, I want to give everybody a brief update. I won't go through all the scores, Corey, while you're on the line, but I do see Mark's comment here in the chat, and I appreciate the super chat. Spencer Petras, 14-22, $118, a touchdown. These are two teams at the very bottom of the Mountain West. All right, these two teams are a combined 1-5 in that conference. But Petras, yes, those stats are correct, and we're just underway in the third quarter. Also, a team Iowa played earlier this year, Don. We've not talked about this, but this is a Troy team that led Iowa in Kinnick at halftime, and they are bad.
They were 1-5 or 6.
They were 1-6, and they're 0-3 in the Sun Belt, and they're getting beat 23-3, just started the third quarter against Arkansas State. So this has been a weird year. There's a lot of weird results going on around the country. I mean, Ohio State nearly losing to Nebraska earlier today is one of them. Anyways, I just wanted to get to that. And then Lemansky, I've got to get to this super chat because I do appreciate the donation here from Lemansky. How about Lemansky bringing it here? Callers and from the Hawkeye of the Storm comments, including myself, wanted more snaps from QB1. How many fans feel like massive opportunity lost this season? Kirk Ferentz referred to 81. Pete and Gordy both played. Kirk Ferentz waited and waited. What was the upside to delaying? So Lemansky, a bit sour. He's happy with the change, but I'll ask you, Corey. You have been a Kirk Ferentz apologist. Did he wait too long to make this change?
See, now I think that's when you have Kirk Ferentz, you gain the opportunity for players to redeem themselves and to make a comeback and kind of rally and recover and improve. And so we were hoping to see that with Cade. Well, he wasn't able to get that done. But I appreciate a guy like Kirk that believes in his players that much and expects expects they're going to rally and improve. Well, he exhausted that, and he even admitted he considered that last week. I don't think it's fair. And I love Lemansky. He's one of my all-time favorite call-in guys or texters. Eric is still my favorite. So Erica,
you're her favorite too, I'm sure.
She loves all the low-hanging fruit that I leave for her.
So look, can I ask you? Let me follow up real quick, Corey, because you are. Can you agree you're a Kirk Ferentz apologist?
For sure, because I like a man that's flawed in that direction.
Okay, so my only question to you and I understand what you're saying, and everybody loves a good comeback story, and I try to be objective here. Like, I've not wanted him benched until this week. I didn't want Cade benched before this week, but I wanted Sullivan to play more. I think we can have balance there. But the reason I ask about waiting too long, and I think the reason Lemansky brings this up with the super chat is over and over again, we see other positions where guys get yanked much quicker. I mean, exponentially quicker than quarterback. Why is it a different standard? And Kirk's never really been able to answer that question. He's never really addressed why it's a different standard.
Now, let me go full transparency here. If I had the ideal coach, it would be a Kirk Ferentz, maybe a little bit younger version of Kirk Ferentz.
Okay.
That would say, listen, everybody has a bad day or a bad game. You're having a bad game. I'm not jerking you from being QB1, but I'm going to pull you. And I wish you'd have done it at Iowa State, Michigan
Yep.
State. I mean, I'm not blind, okay? But what I'm saying is I will accept any flaws that come with Kirk Ferentz because I think that the quality of character and the quality coach he is and what he gets out of his players, no one can consistently get as much as he gets out of a 45. They're ranked 45 recruiting, and they're top 25 type competitive team. So he's 20 positions above his recruiting level. Now, if you want to fault him for his recruiting, you can. It's basically like a Tom Davis is the way I look at it in basketball. Tom Davis couldn't recruit, but he could coach the heck out of them. Ask Sir Jam-a-Lot, Jerry Wright, pardon me. He'll tell you Raveling could recruit like mad, but Davis was just a great, great coach. So
you admit that is a blind spot and that's a flaw. You're just willing to overlook it.
yes, he's
Okay.
he's slow to give up on someone. He has undying belief in his people, and he expects them to recover and to rally.
Except
and to
at
improve.
other positions.
Yeah, you're right. He's more patient with his quarterback. I think too. If you listen to the presser, Kirk kind of revealed that he was a little bit impressed by the command that Sullivan had. I think that he wasn't expecting that much command out of Sullivan tonight. And I think that really opened his eyes. Just Sullivan not having the reps, he's thinking of bringing them in slow. And I think that Kirk probably gained huge confidence from him in the way that, I just see a little pea and vinegar in this kid that, tell you what, it gives me the Drew Tate thing where you're down by 6 points with 10 seconds left and you're on the 40. He might just win this. I mean, he's got that kind of, there's no quit in this kid. He's thinking about winning everything.
Well, I'll give Kirk some credit. I'll defend him on one thing here, Corey. He has not had a backup quarterback like Brendan Sullivan in a long time. So I will agree with you on this, and I think you would state this if I asked you. He has not had that, like, people have wanted him to make a quarterback change for the last 4 years. He has not had somebody like Sullivan to go to until this year. Their quarterback room has been so bad, and with all due respect to Deacon Hill, Deuce Hogan, Joe Labus, Spencer Petras, these are guys that none of these guys are playing at the Power 5 level. You've got Joe Labus struggling at Central Michigan. You've got Deacon Hill, who recently got benched at Utah Tech. You have Petras, who's making a comeback and playing well for a team that's at the bottom of the Mountain West. I'm not ripping them. I'm just simply saying I think we also have to recognize maybe the easiest response that an apologist could make towards someone like me when I ask, why is there a different standard at quarterback? It's simply that Kirk has more confidence in basically the depth of every other room other than quarterback. And that would go back to the Brian Ferentz, Ken O'Keefe debate and Kirk waiting too long to make changes there, because the quarterback room just needed to be better. They needed to be developed better. They needed better recruiting. They need to attack the portal differently, and they've got that now with Lester. So anyways, that's my little spiel. I'll defend Kirk to an extent with that because I just think the quarterback room has not been – there haven't been many guys to turn to until now.
Yeah, and I think that with Cade getting hurt and then going to Deacon and Kirk being kind of handcuffed as far as his capabilities with this backup that he had, I think that experience probably made him latch on to Cade even longer because he'd already gone to a backup last year. And you saw how that went with the strip fumbles on the dropbacks where Deacon's holding the ball low and they just swipe it. And so I think that caused more anxiety for Kirk. To me, Kirk is like, please just don't turn the ball, don't give the ball away. And, and we got a shot to win. And he believes that with his system. And so he wants a quarterback. If he could have a guaranteed 0 turnovers, he would start that quarterback every single time, regardless of the upside. If he could get 0 turnovers, that's going to be his starter, because you turn it over, that's how you give the game away. Now, last point I want to make is shame on you and Don for not talking about the elephant in the room here. Everybody's just quiet about it. Caitlin Clark was in the building, and nobody's made mention of that. That's why we won the game. And that is my RTI Threads player of the game, though she didn't play. Her aura won that game. Let's not kid ourselves.
Caitlin Clark won that award a couple of times on this platform. I'll give her that. And not just Caitlin, but Megan Gustafson was there. Monica Sonato was there. Gabby Marshall, Kate Martin, Tommy Taiwo. I'm trying to think of who else was there. Is there anybody I'm missing there, Don? Did they honor
Megan,
the team?
did you say Megan? Gustafson?
Yeah, Megan Gustafson, yep. Oh, it was cool to see them all back there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sharon Goodman was there too.
Yeah, awesome. She's an engineer.
Is she?
Engineering major. You could just tell she's a smart girl. I'm being stereotypical, but no, it's really exciting because you saw teams keying up on our run game and not having any type of a threat. And it's just really, it's exciting. But I don't think it's fair. These people, and I mean, I love Lemansky, but I don't think it would be reasonable to expect that Kirk would have dumped Cade in the Iowa State game. In Ohio State, that wouldn't have been cause. To put him in during that Michigan State game, that would have been my preference. But then Kirk said they were poised to make that move. But then we scored points and things started to flow. He didn't want to disrupt it in the second half. And really, I hang that loss, a lot of it on our defense for Michigan State. I think Kirk made the right move at the right time. You're not going to pull your starter after Iowa State, especially Kirk Ferentz. You're not going to do that. But yeah, was Ohio State, did he play bad? Yeah, you could have thrown Sullivan in. I don't think we're winning that game. We've already hashed that one out. But I think what was done was prudent, and I think it's the right move. Do I wish that we would have played? Do I wish that we would have put Sullivan in during the Michigan State game just to see what might have happened? Yeah, but we played pretty well. I mean, what did we put up? 20 points in the second half against Michigan State, who was playing tough defensively. It's saddening to know that we're not going to have an opportunity in the playoff. It is, but look what we can build for next year from an offensive standpoint. I mean, Don, don't you think this is still? You can, if Sullivan starts for the bulk majority of this season, finishing out the season, we could have ourselves quite a marriage of a quarterback with an offense that's really favorable for him.
Well, I do think it will give us a chance to stress defenses in a different way than what we've been able to do here in recent weeks. And in that regard, it makes us a better offense.
And Don, it's just I just think back to one of our best passing plays was always the slant. Is it just the way that this offense sets up that it just doesn't lend itself to a slant, or is it that we have a shorter quarterback like a Cade McNamara? They're feeling like they can't hit that slant. But to me, that was always a quick hitter. When we had Marvin McNutt, that was deadly. That won games. How come we never, it's just not in his playbook? Or
It's a good question. You might have known it when you mentioned, Cade's a little bit shorter, and it's a quick throw, of course, and the ball has to be thrown on a line. And obviously, there's a good chance that somebody at the line of scrimmage might be able to get their paws on it. Yeah.
and what's Sullivan's height? Is he like 6'5"?
I don't know that he's that tall, but he's certainly 2 or 3 inches taller, I believe, than Cade.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
No.
I think at least 2 inches.
3?
I could be wrong.
It just
I'll grab.
seems.
Yeah, I'll grab that real quick, but I don't think that's the case.
But
Brendan Sullivan, according to Iowa, Brendan Sullivan is. Oh, they list him at 6'4". Let's see what Cade. I think they list Cade at 6'2". I don't think either one of them are that tall, but
Which supports that I'm correct when I say he's at least 2 inches taller. 2 or more, I do believe.
yeah, they list him at 6'1". They list Cade at 6'1". I've said this before. I've stood next to both of them, as have you, Don, and it doesn't feel like either one of them are that tall. Because I'm taller than Cade, and I don't remember Sullivan seeming like he's taller than me. But yeah, you're right, 3 inches, according to Iowa.
And I'm with you with Reese Dakin on the punting. I mean, Torrey had some good games, but I don't think Torrey hit that many consecutive kicks inside the 10, really inside the 6. I mean, that was.
My recall is 3 of them were fair caught, and only one of them, obviously, he thought it was going to bound into the end zone, but it didn't, and it actually backed up a yard or 2, I believe.
The
it
one.
was one of those ideal pooch punts that it was like Corey Brown's 9-iron. He can back it up if he has to.
Yeah. But he can't back up the score being posted wrong. We need.
I posted the score wrong. I had 40-16. I had 40-16 to start this show, Don, was because that was the score of the game 2 weeks ago against Washington, 40-16, and today it's 40-14. So, anyways, Corey, I got to let you slide, Corey, but
okay,
go ahead. Go ahead, and you have something final to say here.
We need a mathematician on site before you post that score. You need to have Don on site.
All right, I'll wait an hour and a half for Don to get here next.
Great show.
Next week it'll be an hour.
Great show. We've got a group of 10 guys coming for next week. I'm pumped. It's going to be exciting. Any score on Wisconsin?
10-7 right now. Wisconsin's leading Penn State right now, 10-7.
Wow. So that's going to be a dogfight.
And that is halftime right now in Madison. So Penn State going to be in for a dogfight. We're going to end this show a little early, I think, Don, because I think that'd be a good one to watch.
And Michigan State is still up on Michigan, or?
It's 9-7. Michigan leads Michigan State at halftime.
Okay, wow.
And the Badgers still have the jump around working for them too. So.
Yep, that's right.
Could be interesting.
Yes. Corey, appreciate you calling in, sir, as always.
Thanks, guys. Go Hawks.
Thank you, sir. Go Hawks. Absolutely. Chase, want to thank Chase for the donation on Venmo. And he says, with Wisconsin next week in Iowa City, what's your biggest concern? And you may let me pull the rest up. I guess answer that question first, Don. Can you answer Chase's question? What's your biggest concern? Having not watched any of the Penn State game yet, what's your biggest concern about the Badgers coming to town?
Well, you might recall just a week ago, of course, the Badgers played Northwestern. I do recall they really dominated in a lot of areas. Basically, kind of ran through them at will. It almost seemed like. So I guess my first concern is just that they don't beat us with their running game a little bit like Michigan State did. We have to obviously defend the run. You can bet that Wisconsin's going to hope that they can run the ball effectively against us, of course, and shorten the game and all those things. But they want to have balance in their offense. Of course, they're supposed to be an air raid offense, but you can't tell that to a bunch of big linemen up front and a running back that can run for decent yardage. And of course, they're playing with a backup quarterback who now has gained some experience. So I guess first thing that comes to mind for me is still, can we be more efficient with our running game? Let's not forget, for the longest time today, we were not running the ball effectively either. Neither team was running the ball effectively in the first half. But it did seem that the element of a mobile quarterback seemed to open up lanes a little bit better. And let's face it, every time he hands the ball off, typically so much of the time he goes naked away. Well, you got to defend the possibility that the quarterback still got the ball.
Yeah.
And so it cuts down on backside pursuit. It does help. If you're not really viewing the quarterback as much of a threat, then obviously the backside pursuit will be better toward the football. But you do keep people at home much better if the quarterback's a threat to be running naked away from the back.
And Chase's follow-up question is, you may shut this down right now, but Kirk said Cade has the injury, dinged up, but does that make you believe Cade has a good chance to start again next week? I don't think so. I think Brendan, I would be shocked if Cade trots out there as the starter next week, Don. I'm assuming you would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know what concussion protocol means in college versus pro. I'm not sure. I mean, I would assume there's certainly a chance he'll be given a clean bill of health by the middle of the week, if not sooner. And in that regard, maybe he will be entirely available next weekend, and for that matter, available even in practice. Of course, they're not going to knock him around in practice like the Badgers will try to do next Saturday. But the one thing that I will admit, there were times when Hayden tried to keep the other team in the dark as to who was going to start, especially if the quarterbacks had a different profile. And if Kirk has an excuse to do that, it wouldn't shock me if we heard that Cade is questionable for the game. He'll be a game day decision. You hear that sometimes. That'd be a good way of keeping Wisconsin in the dark as to who to get ready for. Wouldn't shock me if we did that.
Ask a Bum, thank you for the super chat. Aaron Graves is beasting this year, and he adds, enter the graveyard fools. Hashtag Aaron Graves. Another nice game for Aaron, and it does feel like he's taken a step forward, Don. He's got a year left in front of him, so don't know what his NFL opportunities will be like after this season, but he has taken a step forward. We've got Lemansky, and then we've got Kyle on our Iowa Smokehouse line. Lemansky, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having this show, and you've got great callers, and I'm glad that Corey stuck up for Coach Ferentz. He's got the opportunity to tie Woody Hayes and go ahead of Woody Hayes. I stand by what I said. I can't back off what I said. And I think if I have my suspicions, and I don't know if it's true, I think the players inside that locker room showed a little backbone and came forward to the coaching staff, if not to Lester. And I think Cade may have lost some of the teammates. And I tell you what, Don Patterson would threaten every blade of grass, knowing what's at stake this year. And at Iowa State, QB2 would have been that game more than just in the red zone, because I watched Don call plays at Iowa. And the credit to why Don played football, I was always just totally surprised at some of the plays out of the playbook I never saw coming during Don's offensive coordinator days. And if Tim Lester had 1 or 2 more years, I think you would have took a stand, because you got to give Tim Lester a lot of credit for what's going on at Iowa. Kirk, of course, probably will break Woody Hayes' record in the Big Ten. But you know what? Every head coach is a CEO, and they measure how involved they get, and give all the credit to Tim Lester what's going on with QB2, because that takes a lot of guts your first year to do what he's done. It's too little, too late. And my point to Corey, very respectfully, caller Corey, you've got to think about team football, and football is the biggest team sport. Those seniors, those juniors that put up on the offensive side, put up with quarterback play, you owe it not only to the quarterback position, you owe it to the tight end position, you owe it to the offensive line, and you owe it to those wide receivers, because we have to recruit the wide receivers to keep them. And I think if you had a running game and a quarterback that was mobile, you would see Vanderzee and some of these people get some space. I'm done preaching, but I think I watched Don Patterson know enough, and he won't say it because he's a gentleman. I'm not. He would have threatened to play the grass a long time ago. And I will stick by my statement. When I call in, I try to really think through things. And I thought this at the Iowa State game, and I've held my mouth for many games thinking the guy that has a chance to Woody Hayes knows a hell of a lot more than I do, but I'll stand by that statement. He just made a mistake.
Well, Lemansky, I have no problem with what you just said. I don't think what you said is disrespectful at all or non-gentlemanlike. That's what I think people have to realize. And I'm not ripping on our friend Corey, who calls in a lot, but I think it is okay to be a fan of a coach and be supportive of that coach while also being critical of that coach. I've never understood the need to defend somebody with everything or explain what they do. Sometimes you can just be like, hey, Kirk should not have enabled his son and carried his son along as long as he did. He should not have stuck with Cade as long as he did. I think that's probably fair. But I was also trying to be balanced heading into this week, and I had said prior to last week, hey, I don't know about Cade being benched. But you're absolutely right, Lemansky. I totally agree. Brendan should have had more time other than just red zone tries. And I thought it was odd that in that first quarter, Don, they're inside the 10 and no Brendan. They settle for the short field goal. No Brendan inside the 10. Or is he just a 4 to 5 yard guy inside the goal line? They've played him between the 10 and the 20 in the past. It's a little bit odd. And I know there's different plays for different personnel, but I just thought it was odd. And Lemansky, I totally agree with a lot of what you just said. And I appreciate your support as well. And everything you just said is totally on limits. There's nothing wrong with it.
And Don doesn't have to talk about this because I put him in an odd position so I have my comments. But here's the thing that's really interesting. Where in the hell was the offensive line coach, the wide receiver coach, the running backs coach? Can't you walk into the CEO office as a group? I know you can't do it one-on-one. I worked in banking for 25 years. But if you go in with a contingent of your coaching staff and say, Kirk, with all due respect, Tim can't do this alone. We've got a lot at stake. We just lost Iowa State. We have a chance to probably threaten to go to the playoffs, probably threaten to win the Big Ten. And I put some blame on all those other coaches that didn't have the guts to march in there and try. They should have. Don, what do you think of? Am I a little crazy talking about mutiny on the bounty? And I'm exaggerating, but you're an assistant coach. Can't you go in with some of your other coaches and say, hey, with all due respect, let's try this. We've got one loss in the Big Ten. We got 18 teams.
Well, there's an intermediate step that could come into play. The most obvious secondary step that I can think of, if one player is struggling, or let's just say it this way, if he's not playing up to the expectations you have for him, the logical thing to do is to consider the guy that's behind him. And you need to get those questions answered during practice. And we talked about this before. That simply means giving equal reps against equal opposition and making a a more thorough evaluation than what you otherwise would be able to make. And if you're still in doubt as to who's better, then you simply find out during the game. That's really the only test that matters, is what happens on Saturday. You can learn a lot during the week, and at least then you have your best guess for the weekend. But at the very least, you get it solved, and we're not talking about trying to solve it in Game 7 or Game 8. That's what you got the preseason for. Get it solved in the preseason. Get it solved in September. Find out who your best players are, and then have the lineup pretty well set come October. And, we didn't do a great job of that, I think, just in certain positions. The one that sticks in everybody's mind, of course, is quarterback, because we simply didn't consider a second quarterback. Not on Saturday, we didn't. Corey, you're furrowing your eyebrows. Do you think I'm wrong? Or?
Well, that's a strong statement to say that you don't think the second quarterback was even considered. That's the only reason I'm furrowing my eyebrow. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think that's a pretty strong statement to say that you don't believe a second quarterback was really considered.
Well, I think it was really considered. I think you give him a chance to prove it on Saturday.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Hey, look at how many corners they've used in the last 2 weeks. They've used
Right.
3 different cornerbacks, not counting garbage time with Jalen Watson today. 3 different corners. And they've all been playing in meaningful snaps at different times, because Phil's like, hey, I'm not impressed with this guy, not impressed with this guy. They're pretty close in practice. Let's see who's better in the game. That's what we've had at quarterback. I mean, I'm not there in practice every day, but every report that I'd received since early August was that these guys were neck and neck. But
Yeah.
again, it seems like there's a different standard at that position, Lemansky.
I'll take you back, Corey, to that kickoff classic years ago against Tennessee. Coach Fry played 3 different quarterbacks that day because Bill Snyder was not sure who's better than who. And he played Dan McGuire, he played Tom Bohosky, and he played a guy, he was actually the third one that played in the game. His name was Chuck Harley. I think they probably all 3 maybe played the next weekend too, or maybe the third weekend. But when Big Ten play rolled around, we found our starter. It wasn't who the fans expected. It was Chuck Harley. And in defense of Bill Snyder's judgment, Chuck Harley, if you go back and look, I'm pretty sure he was a 2-time first-team All-Big Ten quarterback. He got the job done well.
Anything else, Lemansky?
Well, the one thing Kirk has done well, he's measured risk and reward. Why special teams and defense, because you can only recruit so many 5 stars, 4 stars to Iowa, Minnesota, maybe even Wisconsin for a few years. He's right. He was right for many years, but things change. And now the rule changes and emphasis on offensive football. I was going to call in because I think we're lucky to have Kirk all these years. But this risk reward thing is got away from a little bit because the times are changing and the conference is changing. And when he said at the conference, Kaker, I love that Kaker comes on because he hears Kirk talk. What fired me up was he mentioned Bohannon and Gales in 1981. He mentioned that because somebody asked him questions about playing 2 quarterbacks. And Kirk is highly intelligent. He threw that back at the press because he's smart. But infuriated a longtime Hawkeye fan. It infuriates me that we refer to 1981 and playing 2 quarterbacks because it just did not fit this season. And he kind of thinks he knows he's defending himself, but let's be a little bit more accurate in how you approach this season. Very unlike 1981, and I sure love your show. But I know I was around Hap Peterson and George Davis and Norm Granger. He took opportunity away from the rest of this team, and that's what's got me fired up tonight. And I sure love your show. And Don, if I'm out of line, I apologize, but I went to school there. I'm a fan, and that fired me up when he compared to 1981 because he hasn't followed it this season. But I appreciate the show. I'm sorry I I think he owed that to the rest of the team. I'm sorry. But there's more than one guy on the team. I don't care how much money he gets, and I'll end that with that.
Well, Lemansky, we appreciate your call as always, sir, and keep being you. You're doing just fine. Okay, I think we lost Lemansky. All right. Good call. Good call. Passionate Lemansky. Always love passionate Lemansky, and certainly appreciate his contributions to the show. And I don't think he's out of line with what he's saying. I will say this. I brought up our player of the game, which was Reese Dakin. Don, how about this for a stat? Reese outgained the Iowa offense today. 358 yards of punting compared to 355 total yards for the Iowa offense. So kind of a fun stat there.
Well, we've had any number of punters that produce better than our offense in years past,
but he was called on to punt a lot in garbage time with some longer punts, and it didn't feel so ridiculous today.
You're right. He did a nice job of flipping the field, especially protecting our lead. Did a good job of giving them a long field.
Absolutely. And want to thank, let's see, Chase bringing it again with the Venmo and comment. He says, my biggest concern next week will be Iowa. Let's see, having to pass to open up the run game. Also, if Sully does start, he needs to work on ball security receiving the snap. Don, we've got Sullivan's numbers up here. There was at least, well, he had the fumbled snap a week ago. There was a weird snap today that went straight to Caleb Johnson. And then I think Sullivan dropped one other one. Is that a problem with Brendan right now, or is it more of an issue between Brendan and his center? Because there have been some weird issues between Logan Jones and Brendan.
Well, let's not forget that in general, he doesn't practice with Logan Jones, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
With the twos, and maybe now at least he'll get more reps with the ones, and he'll be even more prepared to take snaps from Logan.
I want to give everybody an update. Wisconsin, Penn State just starting the third quarter. Wisconsin leads 10-7, and Michigan just scored another touchdown. They're up 16-7 on Michigan State. That game over on the Big Ten Network. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got Kyle, who is here. Kyle, it's been a while. Not to throw some poetry at you, but it's good to see you.
Good to see you. I appreciate Lemansky and you guys' commentary, so try not to reiterate things too much, because I think you need to actually make some swag that says everybody's entitled to their opinion for the Hawkeye of the Storm, because that's like a little bit of your catchphrase, right? Including us, I guess. I think that the quarterback situation and all that stuff is really difficult, because even last week, most of the narratives surrounded blaming the defense, which I totally understand. They played really poorly, and I think we can acknowledge that. But two things can be true at the same time. We can acknowledge that the defense played poorly, didn't tackle well, et cetera, et cetera. They give up 32 points in a game that many thought was like one of the worst defensive outings that they had ever seen as a Hawkeye fan. And at that point, we had averaged 29 points a game. I guess just forgive me if I'm not too quick to rush to blame the defense when they've won us about 15 games over the last 5 years. And just would like the offense to maybe score one touchdown in the first half to make it 12-7, like just to put a little bit. And so I think some of those things, when you really look at it, for me, it's not that anybody's really, I think some people get over emotional with the Kirk stuff, but I do think that, I think sometimes we're just frustrated at how late it seems like the decisions are, whether it was with the offensive coordinator, and now we're reaping the effects of being so slow with that we have a first-year offensive coordinator with a ton of fifth-year and sixth-year seniors trying to build a team. That kind of stinks. It stinks for those fifth-year, sixth-year seniors, which I think Lemansky referred to. It stinks that we're so slow to not make a QB change, but just give them plays and packages, such as Sullivan versus Iowa State in the red zone. It's like, I'm a college coach now. My job's not to wait until our conference season and start losing games to figure out when to pitch pitchers. My job's to do that right now in the fall. How can I best use them so we can win games? And I think sometimes we're just a little slow to do that. And it's not like we have a fantastic track record, of producing these high-level quarterbacks. So forgive us if we're just a little skeptical and just want just a little bit more, not reactionary, but making those decisions and just trying to figure out the answers before we go lose 3 games and we kind of put ourselves in a position where it's like, shoot, none of those goals that we were really hoping for can be accomplished anymore. And just like you said, I think it's okay to feel both ways, to really love Kirk, but also be frustrated with the just being a little too late to the party, honestly.
And Kyle, what's frustrating, I think, to me is so much of that could be alleviated by being willing to play 2 guys at times. You don't have to have a 2 quarterback system.
Correct. Yep.
And I don't like Jim Harbaugh. And I thought it was weird how they did the whole Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy thing when those guys were kind of going through auditions together. But at the same time, it got worked out, right? It worked itself out during the course of the season. In fact, it was worked out by the time they hit conference play. So you could have done this through. Let's talk about Illinois State and Troy. You want to really get up, throw an ice cube down my back. Let's talk about the fact that they had garbage time in both of those games, where they still weren't playing in between the 20s. That makes no sense whatsoever. There is no good explanation for that. Just like there's no good explanation. I don't care if Don Patterson, Kyle Dupik, and Corey Bratta are the other 3 quarterbacks in the room when you're up 27-0 at 3 a.m. against a bottom feeder Mountain West team, and you're still playing Spencer Petras.
One of us should be in the game.
There's no defending for that. There's no defending that.
Right.
So there is no logical explanation for that. I defended Kirk from a standpoint of, in general, making a switch. Like, they didn't have much to go to when they had Petrus starting and when they had Deacon Hill starting. They do now. You're right about Kirk being too slow, but they could have alleviated a lot of this by just saying, hey, like we're treating corner and these different positions where we don't know. It was really close in the fall. Anybody with any little inside information, you don't have to be an expert or an insider to know that was the case. These guys were neck and neck during fall camp. Play both of them. I even gave Kirk the benefit of the doubt, Kyle, throughout August. I said, I think they're going to play both of them. How stupid was I for saying that? But I really did think, I thought, he'll play both of them, because I was even hearing that Sullivan may have had a little bit of an edge. And then you add in the fact that he can run, maybe that's the tiebreaker. That wasn't the case. And instead they waited until they were out of the conference and the college football playoff race. And that is the maddening part.
And isn't the thing that's true about all of us as human beings is, like, the thing that's our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness. And so for Kirk, if one of his greatest strength, as Corey was trying to point out, was his loyalty, wanting to give guys second chances, that also puts the team in a tough position when every week from the podium you say, no, Spencer's our starter. Nope. Deacon's our starter. Nope. Cade's our starter. You could very easily play, as Don, you've attested to, over and over and over again. Just package of plays, play Sullivan a little bit, play somebody else, even play some of those other quarterbacks, and maybe you would reveal that they really aren't any good. Some of the old quarterbacks, that they couldn't hack it. You just had a package for them. You try to do that, and then you go to the podium and you say the same thing. You say, hey, no, Cade's our quarterback, but we really think like Sully can help this team win. And so we just wanted to throw some plays in, because obviously he has a little bit different skill set. So we're just trying to maximize everybody on our team. That's all you'd have to do. And so if we're gonna laud Kirk for his faithfulness to his players, then let's at least acknowledge that there's some negative side effects to that as well.
Yeah, and by the way, Nick Saban. I remember and I know these are 2 5-star kids, but Nick Saban did the same thing with Hurts and Tagovailoa. Well, how many years ago was that? I remember him kind of getting testy with the media, questioning him on that. But part of the reason they were questioning him on it is because he was playing multiple guys to start out. And then eventually Hurts ends up transferring to Oklahoma, had a great career there. But and Kirk's a Saban guy. Those guys coach together. I don't understand it. But Kyle, congratulations to you. We haven't been able to talk to you since you got the new job. You are at, remind me, are you at Luther College?
Actually, it's funny you say that, because Luther's apparently, I'm at Wartburg, and apparently you're not allowed to say Luther's name anywhere in the vicinity because they're such a big rival. So I think that'll be a funny joke. I'll cut that out for my head coach. He's a big Hawk fan, so he'll love that.
Okay. All right. Well, I apologize. Well, congratulations. You are the Wartburg pitching coach, correct?
Yep. I'm on the baseball staff. I'm doing our pitching stuff. Yep.
I'm curious. Well, we'll talk off the air sometime about one of our sponsors that hopped on with us this year in Casmium, because I know you were in the high school ranks previously, and that's really Casmium's focus. But very, very big baseball analytics initiative there. So anyways, anything for Kyle, Don? I know you're a big baseball guy, and we're in the middle of the World Series. And
Well, what got me really going in analytics, of course, was the movie Moneyball. And I still enjoy baseball a lot. My dad taught me baseball as a little leaguer and a pony league player, and he loved baseball and knew a lot about baseball. So I've always loved the game, and I did watch Game 1, and I'll probably catch some of Game 2. I think it's on right now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Dodgers are up 4-1.
Well, I'm a little bit of a Yankee fan. I admit, way back in the days of Mantle and Maris and Whitey Ford, you can understand why I might be a Yankee fan.
Yep.
Based on all that.
Yeah.
All right.
I grew up.
Thanks, guys.
I grew up watching Derek Jeter, A-Rod, those guys. So I'm not a baseball guy in general. I love Moneyball. In fact, Don, that was the first conversation you and I ever had. Was we ended up talking about Moneyball, and I went and watched the movie and loved it. And part of the reason why I'm really into Casmium and this analytics and getting to know Don, and kind of everything's full circle. So Kyle, appreciate you calling in as always, sir. Good to see your face.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck to Warburg.
Absolutely. All right. Couple comments here in the chat before we get to those. And we've also got Landon here, who is next up on our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Chase, bringing it again on Venmo. Appreciate the donation, Chase. And he adds, let's see here, we're getting a bit of a delay in our... Well, we'll come back to that. We were talking about the first quarter way back when, Don. Let me finish some of my notes here. So Iowa gets down to the Northwestern 6. They don't bring in Sullivan, which I thought was strange, at the Northwestern 6 in that first quarter. They get a field goal, so they fail. They end up getting a field goal. Drew Stevens, Mr. Reliable. Second quarter, you mentioned the Quinn Schulte interception. Tremendous play. He dropped one last week, which was a lot easier than this one. He went and got this one. And then right after that, a horrifically thrown ball by Cade McNamara ends up in a pick 6. I tweeted out 3 words, and I did summon the late, great Hayden Fry. I said, Hayden Fry would say 3 words, get him out. Right?
Right.
Am I wrong? I texted you the same thing at that point.
I smiled when I saw that because you recall that came up at the ball game, right? And I said, well, if he hadn't been pulled already when digging through the interception down the goal line, Coach Fry's response would have been only 3 words, get him out.
I will give Kirk credit. He got him out, Don. Whether it was injury related or not, they got him out. They end up punting on 4th and 2 in Northwestern territory. Took a couple of series, a couple of drives for Sullivan to really get his feet under him. He didn't make any bad decisions, did overthrow Seth Anderson on one ball on a crossing pattern. And they just kind of played the field position for a while. Restaking was so important. And then Max Llewellyn comes up with a big safety that was reviewed. I don't understand why we can't get cameras on goal lines. I don't get it. I just watched an NFL football game on Thursday night in which Jared Goff's, or was it not Jared Goff? Who was it that got his helmet, the face mask pulled down for a safety to end the game? Who was I even watching, man? Somebody's going to tell me in the chat. But they were able to go to the goal line view. There are goal line cameras in the NFL, and I looked this up. Why don't we have goal line cams, pylon cams in college? Well, it costs too much money. Do you know how much money is in this sport? Give me a break. I don't buy it. That's insane. It's insane we don't have goal line cams. It came up twice today on the safety and then on the Caleb Johnson touchdown. Was it the Caleb Johnson touchdown? One of the touchdowns. It comes up all the time. You need a view down the goal line, Don. It's insane to me. Do you have any insight as to why we don't have a camera there?
Well, you remember that touchdown? It was this, was it us or Iowa State? 2 years ago. Yeah, it was Iowa State. It was Big 12 officials, and I made the comment. They said, did they score on a sneak or did we not score on our sneak? I can't remember.
I believe it was Iowa not scoring.
Iowa not scoring. I made the comment. I said, if we'd have been playing in Ames with Big 10 officials, you would have gotten the exact same call because
you can't see.
You can't see, and they tend to favor. We're talking about inches or even parts of an inch.
It's just insane to me. And people that I've heard, another one of the things that I when I was researching this earlier, well, logistically it's hard with all these different stadiums. How hard is it to have, you got cameras up above. How hard is it to have a camera positioned down on the goal line, even from above, that can go down and look above? I just, it seems absolutely bizarre to me. They had another 4th and 2 punt to the Northwestern 5. Again, another tremendous effort from Dakin. And how about this? Very early in the Sullivan experiment, Don, they go empty. And what do they do out of empty? They go QB draw.
Yeah.
So that was really impressive. And then
a play we've talked about.
We've talked about it a lot, but we've never really been able to see it out of an Iowa quarterback because they haven't had mobile quarterbacks.
The recall is it might have been worth 7 yards or so.
Yeah. And then how about this? Caleb Johnson, what a run. His first touchdown run of the day, finished off with an impressive stiff arm. Once he gets to that second level, he is almost impossible to stop. And now he's figured out the element of cutting back in when he gets to the sideline, which just brings his game to the next level. Third quarter, tremendous 40-yard reception by Johnny Pascuzzi, because it was a great play by Brendan Sullivan, Don. How about Sullivan having the wherewithal? He could have ran for 20 to 30 yards, but he flips it to Pascuzzi and he says, I'm going to go down and block for my tight end.
Yeah.
How about that play by Brendan Sullivan?
Well, that's a play, I think, where he won over most of the fans, if he hadn't won them over already. It was a neat play to see because you realize he doesn't think he's above, giving blocking support to the tight end. He's fast enough to do it, so he got out in front of him and did the best he could to help out.
Real quick, Michigan State hits a field goal. It's now 16-10 Wolverines in the third quarter. And then Sullivan, after that 40-yard reception by Johnny Pascuzzi, Brendan Sullivan with the touchdown on what I believe Anthony Herron called it a mesh run. Looked like an option. It was an option play, right, Don? But talk about that rushing touchdown off the right edge for Brendan Sullivan. Third quarter.
Is that the play where he had the back as the lead blocker? Or no, you're talking about, it was his own read, I guess, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I believe it was his own read. Yeah.
Where he went wider.
Yes.
Just did a good job of recognizing where he was on the field. And again, you just need to find a way to at least gain some yardage after contact. You don't need much at that point because we're already on the goal line, and he was able to avoid getting stood up and able to step on through for an easy read for a touchdown.
We mentioned the Caden Weegan, amazing kickoff return for a touchdown down the sideline. His speed really showcased. How about Caleb Johnson? Another touchdown. He finished with 3 on the day. And then Northwestern fumbles. I didn't hear a whistle. They called it forward progress. I didn't think the whistle was blown until well after the ball was out, Don. I thought that was a weird call. Did you notice that?
It was. Yeah. I thought
his forward progress was stopped. I'll agree with that. But the whistle was not blown until well after the ball was out.
Yeah. I couldn't tell when the whistle blew, but it certainly seemed like an odd call because he was certainly still straight in to gain yardage. And
he was being pushed back, but
yeah, I mean, it was obvious he wasn't going to get much further, but the ball did come out pretty quick after his forward progress was stopped. I'm talking about within about a foot or two, I think. He wasn't pushed back very far when the ball came out. I do remember that.
And then how about the interception for Jay Higgins? Shades of Tyler Sash, the pinball interception against Indiana back in 2009. That was it, just having your hands in the right place at the right time on the bat down.
I'm glad you brought that up because they never gave us a replay in the stadium. Please explain to me how that happened.
It was, you had a convergence on the quarterback. Nick Jackson gets up, knocks it down, and I'm telling you, they said, well, quick hands by Jay Higgins. He knocks it down, and Jay Higgins just happened. Maybe he got his hands out. I don't know how you can react that fast. He happened to have his hands like this, and the ball just fell into his hands. You're going to have to watch the play back, Don. It was, like I said, shades of Tyler Sash, the pinball interception against Indiana in 2009. All right, those are my notes. Let's go to what I think might be our last caller because we want to get the final quarter in of Penn State, Wisconsin. Penn State has just taken the lead. Interception, return for a touchdown, a pick 6 for Wisconsin, and the Nittany Lions have taken the lead in Madison. Let's go to Landon on our Iowa Smokehouse line. Landon, welcome.
Thank you guys. Well, that's not good that Penn State scored. But I thought it was overall a pretty good performance today by the Hawkeyes. Obviously, I think every single quarter except for the fourth quarter we scored. I just think it's been really cool this season to see us have 3 40-point games, especially 2 in conference play. I just look at the last couple of years, and I really say, when has Iowa really been able to handle bad teams? I'm not saying Northwestern's a horrible team, but and Washington's a decent team. But Iowa is in the past has struggled to win non-conference games big. They wouldn't put up 40, 50 points. They wouldn't get in the high scoring. And obviously, we haven't seen 50 yet this year. But I really feel like this year how Iowa has just executed offensively in these games that you should be winning big. You should be winning against Northwestern, against Illinois State 40-10 or 40-0 or whatever. You should be winning those games. And I've just been really impressed with the Hawkeyes this year about the way Kirk's finally able to handle these things. Because, last year beating teams, in the Big Ten, you beat a decent Northwestern team, I believe 10-7, but just different conference games where you played bad teams and you were in close games, and just to really finally blow out them, I think overall that's just really, really good on the Hawkeyes standpoint. Obviously, the defense looked better tonight. I think kind of got back with some of those tackles, but just still a lot of steps. And obviously, Brendan Sullivan, I've been waiting to see him. I was yelling at my TV. I was like, yes, it's finally Brendan time. He has good energy. Always. I love Brendan. And I'm just curious to see, is that Cade McNamara's probably not his last snap in an Iowa uniform, but if it is, that could possibly be his last snap of football in his career. Because I don't know if that's true, but
Don, do you want to address that, Don? Do you think we'll see Cade again?
I don't know.
I think we will. I think at some point we'll see him again. I don't think it's his last play.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing I've told Brendan in recent weeks when I've run into him a couple of times, and I've always reminded him, keep getting yourself ready because the opportunity is going to come. You owe that to the team, of course, to be ready. Your mindset has to be that you're one play away. Even if they switch positions on the depth chart, I would tell Cade the same exact thing. Cade, you're one play away from having to make a difference in this game. And if Brendan was 1 and Cade was 2, I would tell him, you better be ready. You owe that to the team. You owe that to the program. And that's an opportunity, of course, that you can benefit in a huge way too from, is to win back the job. There's nothing that says that the backup can't perform better than the starter at any position. And the key is to be ready when that opportunity presents itself.
Anything else, Landon?
I'm trying to think. Sorry, I had a lot of things. I would just also say having a mobile quarterback is finally what the Hawkeyes have needed. I've been frustrated in the past. I know what we saw of Marco Linus last year in the bowl game was against Tennessee's backups when he was running around and doing that. But to do that against Northwestern starters tonight on the behalf of Brendan Sullivan, and we saw it earlier this year, I like, how is he going to get sacked? I mean, he's been sacked in his career, but he's just so elusive in the pocket. You saw in whatever that game, well, there was a play, I believe, and maybe in the third or fourth quarter where he was under pressure, ran about 10, 15 yards back, rolled around, and then just threw it out of bounds. But just the fact that, with Cade, we saw a lot of just, he obviously he was injured, and it's like, and I think you talked about something in the show, but where has these opportunities been this year to give Brendan a shot? We are 8 games now into Iowa football season. And in my opinion, even go back to a couple games like the Iowa State game when Iowa couldn't do anything in the second half and against Iowa State when they scored the 1 touchdown. I mean, even putting a guy like him in could have possibly, got some points to win that game. And just different games, I just see a lot of frustration. And I just, it's just like, finally, we have this mobile quarterback. He might have some trouble throwing the ball, but he's also he's like a running back at quarterback. He's so fast, and he also can block. You saw the way he can get there, and for that block, he was blocking downfield today, and he just got a lot of good energy.
Good stuff, Landon. Don, do you have something to add to that?
I have one comment to make. Just think about this. You've heard me say before, it really helps to have a quarterback that can extend plays. Obviously, if you were playing against Iowa a few weeks ago and you saw snaps only out of our starter, you would have been able to tell your defense, your DBs in particular, here's the good news, guys. We think we can get to him in whatever the coordinator might say. We think we can get to the quarterback in 3.5 seconds. So all you have to do is play pass defense for 3.5 seconds. You're not going to have to defend for 6 seconds. Well, when you get into a mobile quarterback situation, now all of a sudden you have to keep playing. And that's difficult. And Corey, you've heard me talk about flush situations before. One thing I would do if Sully's our guy going forward, I would definitely spend some time on flush drills and be sure our guys understand it's important that the quarterback and the receiver be on the same page. And you might recall Corey me talking about it back when we lost to Ohio State back in '85. We threw a couple of picks that day in flush situations because we made the mistake of working parallel to the line of scrimmage with our receivers. We said never again will that happen. In flush situations from that point forward, we did one of two things. We either came back toward the line of scrimmage to make sure that we were a safe target, or especially if we needed a big score, a big play, guess what we did? When the quarterback bought time and you had a position to be in position to catch a long throw, in other words, if he's flushing right, I'm going to break deep, but I'm going to break deep toward the right. I'm going to break down the field, but I'm going to be thinking about getting myself in position so that he can hit me. It doesn't do me any good to run down the field on the left side of the hash mark, outside the hash mark, if he's flushing right? Obviously, you got to work in the direction he's working. But the point is, be prepared, especially if you need a big play. The quarterback has bought us extra time. Somebody's got to be in position to break it downfield. And the good news is that quarterback's looking for them because they both know the same thing. We need a big play. They're both looking for the big play. And if they're both looking for it, there's an even better chance that they can find each other.
Anything else, Landon?
Oh, sorry, guys. I agree. I agree about a lot of the stuff you're saying. I know you guys kind of talked about this earlier, but I'm not trying to really change the subject a little bit. Just a couple of things I was thinking about is just really like, I'm a lot younger, but I just got a lot of frustration in the last couple of years with Iowa quarterbacks, especially last year with a guy like Deacon Hill, who obviously was not a Division I starter, what should not have been a division starter. And then we see a guy like, and then we see a guy like Joey Lavis, who has been doing pretty well this year, I believe. Still, isn't he at Central Michigan? Yeah, he's been doing pretty well this year.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What is your definition of pretty well?
Well, I think he's been doing better than Deacon has, because I saw Deacon got injured possibly, and I saw Petrus has been just throwing interceptions at Utah State. But
Petrus is actually having statistically a better year than Labus. Let me read you Labus's stats.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, so actually, I'm showing, and I haven't been following Joey Labus here of late, but are they playing today? So all I know is Joe Labus had a 5-interception game earlier this year against Florida International. And then against Ohio, he only threw 9 balls. I'm assuming he either got pulled or got hurt. I've not heard anything about an injury, but his stats so far at Central Michigan, he's throwing for 59%. 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. As far as rushing is concerned, just 19 yards, which means he's really not, he's kind of broken even with sacks. But, and then Carson May, Cyhawk C Money wants to know about Carson May. He's on the bench down at Abilene Christian. So, I mean, Petrus right now is having the best time of any. Let me give you an update on Petrus today. He is, let's see, he is no longer the leading passer. So I'm not getting his numbers right off the bat here. It looks like he's 21 of 32. He's thrown 32 passes, but only for 161 yards. So, Don, that's not a very good pass yards per attempt. What does that equal?
5 yards per attempt.
Yeah, that's not very good. 4.9 to be exact. But he is the undisputed starter, and Deuce Hogan was sharing snaps before he went down. It sounds like Joe Labus is at least sharing snaps. May isn't playing. Deacon Hill is no longer playing. So, yeah, a lot of mediocre quarterback play from past 5 Iowa rooms.
All I want to finish with is just really like in the past with these Iowa quarterbacks, and we see it is like, obviously in the Big Ten, I would say Iowa has never, and in the last couple of years, a lot of the other Big Ten quarterbacks has been better than Iowa's starting quarterbacks. The only one I can think of is maybe Nate Stanley, that some of the Big Ten teams did not have a better starting quarterback then. And my question in the future is, we know how Kirk has liked to run the system. And now with the transfer portal, Kirk likes to bring in the guy, right? He likes to let him, redshirt him his freshman year, or not even redshirt really, because they really I believe Beathard only started for 2 years, I think, or whatever, but whatever. And Stanley started for 3 years, and so did Petrus. So they kind of like to bring him in their first year, let him see the game, and then have him start for 3 years. That's what Petrus and Stanley did. But when I look at this, I'm like, what's the future now? Because, right, Sullivan only has 1 year of eligibility next year or whatever. And then is it on to, could Marco have a year left? What is the 2026? We never really know. But for me, guys, I really look at this as what is the Iowa QB future? That's really all my question is.
Appreciate the call, Landon. Yeah, that's a good question. Somebody asked earlier about Marco. In fact, that's one of the comments in the chat. Let me find it here. I'll throw this up here. So Cameron wants to know, is Marco going to stay as QB2 next year? Yeah, I mean, if he has reason to believe he'll be QB2 next year, then I'd have reason to stay, Don, because look at all these other guys that leave and then don't do anything. With Tim Lester's system, Brennan's only got 1 more year, and he was thrust into a starting role all of a sudden, I think. We think he's going to be the starter next week, but we're just guessing, Don. I mean, it could be James Rezar, it could be the Jimmy Sullivan, who they bring in next year out of Indiana, who could be a portal guy moving forward.
I'll be honest with you, Corey. As an old QB coach, I'm sitting there today and I'm thinking we're up 40-14. We still got 5, 6, 7 minutes left, whatever. I'd go ahead and pull number 1 and put in Marco. Here's my point. It would almost look wrong to give Sullivan any kind of throw at that point in the game, because he'd been in there playing for a long time. Quite a long time, but would there have been anything wrong with inserting Marco and just give him a chance to make a few simple passes? Northwestern could not accuse us of trying to run it up. We're just trying to make a first down.
I agree.
And,
at the minimum, if you're going to just hand the ball off, why is every other backup in the game except quarterback?
Right.
I just
but
don't.
Truthfully, I can say this as a head coach. It never bothered me if they put in their third quarterback. If they had us down by 21 or 28, they put in their third quarterback and he threw on 3rd and 7. Well, my God, aren't they obligated to try to make a first down? I mean, we're obligated to try to stop them. They're obligated to try to make a first down. So does it bother me if the third quarterback gets to throw on 3rd and 7? Of course not. They're just trying to keep the ball away from us. They're not trying to score. They're just, and at the same time, of course, give that third quarterback a chance to prove he can do something too.
And Sullivan did throw the ball once or twice there while they were trying to milk clock. I don't understand. I know that that's not going to be a main topic in the post-game press conference, but at that point, Marco, I mean, you're not going to put Cade back in the game. Why would you not give Marco snaps? But that's the same philosophy we've been watching for years. That's not Tim Lester. That is Kirk Ferentz, because that's consistent through multiple OCs. John says, already with a transfer visiting today, the JUCO corner from Southeast, do you foresee Iowa being more active in the portal this offseason? Yes, I do, but hard to anticipate. I mean, I think receiver is always going to be on the list. DB is going to be on the list. Would have to think quarterback might be on the list. They also lose a lot at linebacker, but they have a lot of young guys they like at linebacker. But you're going to see less, I think, ongoing moving forward, less transfers at linebacker, less transfers at O-line, although I think with all the guys they lose on the O-line, you'll probably get 1 or 2 guys. They've not had as much success with transfers up front. I mean, I think of Dejon Parker, comes in, quite a bit of hype, never really settled in. You got Coy Cronk, never really settled in back in 2020. We can go down the list, but they will be aggressive, because everybody has to be aggressive now if you want to keep pace, and they're losing a lot of players to graduation. Matt says, does Gill have 1 more year? Yes. Pete, what channel is Iowa basketball on tonight? That was last night, Pete. So if you have BTN Plus, you can watch that game on demand. How about Troy making a comeback, Don? They were down 23-3. They've cut it to 26-4 in the 4th quarter, trying to make a run back against Arkansas State. Let's give everybody a quick scoreboard update. Miami trying to send the Seminoles of Florida State to 1-7. The 6th ranked Hurricanes, 29-7 4th quarter. West Virginia leading Arizona 31-19 in the fourth. Utah and Houston maybe going to overtime here. 14-14 under a minute and a half in the fourth to go. Petrus and the Aggies leading Wyoming 24-22 in the fourth quarter. I mentioned Troy, Arkansas State. Penn State leads Wisconsin. That's the game you and I are going to go watch, I'm sure, Don. 14-13. They just ended the third quarter. Number 8, LSU leading number 14, Texas A&M 17-14 in the third. Michigan now up 24-10 on Michigan State in the fourth quarter. Mark Stoops and his Wildcats trailing Auburn 17-10 in the third. Number 16, Kansas State leading Kansas 16-14. Number 22, SMU leading Duke 14-7. Fresno State up on San Jose State 20-7. Those are your games in progress. A few other results from around the country earlier today. Oregon blowing out Illinois. Ohio State squeaking by Nebraska. Texas squeaking by Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, unbelievable what they've been able to do, and one more game away from bowl eligibility. BYU taking down UCF. Navy, they take their first loss at the hands of Notre Dame. Indiana, they continue their unbeaten streak, 31-17 win over Washington. Alabama blowing out Mizzou, 34-0. That is a top 25 Mizzou team. Ole Miss defeating Oklahoma, 26-14. Virginia Tech over Georgia Tech, 21-6. UNC over Virginia, 41-14. Arkansas over Mississippi State, 58-25. Joey Labus, he must not be playing, Don. I'm assuming maybe either he's healthy or he got benched. His Chippewas, his Central Michigan Chippewas, they played Tyler Jefferson at quarterback, who threw for 62 yards, an interception, an average of 3.6 yards per attempt. 62 yards, his QBR was 28.3. So either Labus is hurt or he is just plummeted down
It
the...
sounds like every other QB on the roster must be injured. If we didn't see a second quarterback.
Yeah, those are Iowa-like numbers, Don. And the Chippewas get blown out by Miami, Ohio, 46-7. Minnesota beats Maryland, 48-23. Wake Forest over Stanford, 27-24. Baylor over Oklahoma State, 38-28. TCU over Texas Tech, 35-34. And let's see, Oregon State falling to Cal, 44-7. And, of course, if you missed it, Thursday night, big win for Pitt. They remain unbeaten, 41-13 over Syracuse. And then Boise State on Friday, 29-24 over UNLV. USC beating Rutgers 42-20. And Louisville beating Boston College 31-27. So there's your scoreboard update and a couple of Big Ten games heading into the fourth quarter that are of note. Doug Christensen, it looks like you are in our queue, Doug. If you want to chat with Coach Patterson, your device is not connected. You'll need to connect your mic before we can add you to the stream and add you to the show. He did ask in the private chat, is anybody bothered that Iowa State could make it to the playoffs before Iowa? Yeah, I'm bothered by that, sure. I also don't know that it's bad for Iowa. Like, it's annoying, but I don't think that's bad for Iowa. It's a team Iowa lost to, and, you know, it makes in-state recruiting more difficult. Don, that's not a great Big 12 conference. They're going to have to win that conference to make the Final 12. So there's no guarantees. But yes, they're still very much in contention for a playoff spot. Don, final quarterback numbers from today. Cade McNamara, 7-13, 73 yards, and an interception, got yanked. Apparently, maybe dinged up, maybe going through concussion protocol. Brendan Sullivan came in, played admirably against his former team. 9-14 in through the air, 79 yards, 8 carries, 41 rushing yards. Caleb Johnson, also a good day, 14 attempts, just 14 carries, Don. Might be a season low. I have to go back to game one. He may have had less carries because he only played one half against Illinois State. But 109 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. Talk about efficiency. Also 2 receptions for 9 yards. A couple other stat sheet notes. Iowa's punter outgained the Iowa offense 358-355. Stop me if you've heard that before. Iowa as a whole eclipsed the 200-yard mark on the ground. 203 yards for the game. It outgained Northwestern as a team 355-163. By the way, Northwestern also outgained Iowa with their punting unit. 371 punt yards for the Wildcats. Both teams punted the ball very well, but Iowa certainly controlled the field throughout the game. Caden Weegan, the big punt return for a touchdown. Both teams had punt returns for touchdowns. Jay Higgins led all defensive players with 8 tackles, also had an interception. He would have been our defensive player of the game without question. Good to see Sebastian Castro back in there, and Nick Jackson gave him credit for the deflection, ended up with a half sack on the day, and Max Llewellyn continues to improve. He ended up with that sack for a safety. We saw Kenneth Merriweather get a sack. Good to see some young guys get some time. I mentioned Aaron Graves earlier. Deshaun Lee looked good after that cornerback spot was suspect a week ago, and Drew Stevens made everything he was asked to do today. And Iowa spread the ball around. A bunch of receivers got catches. Seth Anderson, Jarrett Bowie, Dayton Howard, Zach Ortworth, Luke Lachey, Johnny Pascuzzi. And they tried to target a couple other tight ends, and Andrew Lynch and Rusty Van Wetzing. I guess he's more of a fullback, but Iowa pulls away in the final quarter, or excuse me, in the final half, the third quarter, 28-0. The Hawkeyes outscoring the Wildcats in that third. And I tweeted this out, Don, at one point, and I know it wasn't all about Brendan Sullivan. Kirk made that clear after the game, and he's right. But I tweeted this out during the game. Iowa made a quarterback change trailing 7-3 with 9:25 left in the second quarter. In the following 19 minutes and 53 seconds of game time, they outscored Northwestern 30-0. They ended up getting another touchdown before Northwestern responded, so 37-0 after that quarterback change. 37-0 run. So it seemed like they got a shot of momentum from that change. Did they not, Don?
It seemed that way, yes. And that's what one of the listeners texted in was. It appeared that it changed the dynamics on our bench within our team. It's hard to measure that, of course, but I think you have heard me say already. It just stresses the defense a little bit more to realize the quarterback may still have the ball, and for that matter, in a passing situation when he does break contain, now we're really stressed because he's a threat to run for yardage. He's a threat to throw. It has a chance to become a big play. And that's the beauty of a scrambling quarterback.
Sounds like Joey Labus may have been dealing with some season-ending arm surgery, so best wishes to him. I do want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, RTI Threads. Check out the apparel of guys like Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer, the official merchandise, the NIL merch for all these athletes and more. Visit rtithreads.com and click on the NIL tab. Again, that's rtithreads.com. Shop your favorite Hawkeyes with RTI Threads. Also want to remind everybody, if you haven't done so, go over and check out Brad Van Meter and his team at State Farm. You can call him for a free quote on your preferred insurance policies. His number, 515-256-6480, and he and his team, they're all big Hawkeye fans. You can also visit him online at bradvanmeter.com. Again, that's Brad Van Meter at State Farm down in Des Moines. He will get you set up with a great quote on insurance. And want to take a moment to thank Ascent Nutrition. Let's kind of feature their website just for a second. This is their website, folks, their landing page with our show. So it's actually goascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes. If you want to check this out, you can use the code Hawkeyes15, Hawkeyes15 at checkout for 15% off your order. This company, they're a U.S. company with strong Iowa roots. Their owner, Lance Shuttler, huge Hawkeye fan. In fact, we've got an interview coming out with Lance here in the coming days if you want to get to know him and his backstory and kind of his story at Iowa. But this Ascent Nutrition Detox Bundle, if you're tired of being tired in the mornings, tired throughout the day, feeling like you're not clear mentally, maybe you're having some digestion issues, gut problems, whatever the case may be, these products and others can really help out your quality of life. Yes, free shipping on all orders, $149 plus, but you'll get 15% off by using our code Hawkeyes15. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes15. The link is in our description. You have a 90-day money-back guarantee. All their products are wild harvested. They're pure. They're clean. And they will give you what you need to improve your livelihood, whatever that may be. Again, that's goascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes. And just an update, Penn State scores another touchdown. They're up 21-13. Extra points good. 21-13 over Wisconsin. Just started the fourth quarter. Michigan State just scored another touchdown. They're back within 7 in the fourth quarter against Michigan. Don, anything else to that I missed? I mean, I know, we kind of sped this up a little bit because I got you for about half the show, but anything I missed about this game? I know we're going to talk more about Brennan Sullivan on future shows, but the Hawkeyes with an impressive win today, and they set their sights now on the Badgers.
The only negative I can think of, it was disappointing the way we struggled in the first half and running the ball. And I know we've discussed, does it help if Sully's in the game versus Cade? And the bottom line is we were giving up some penetration in the first half. We were having defenders hit us in the backfield. Northwestern's, their rush defense is decent, as you know. Statistically, they've been pretty good. We struggle to run the ball, and we're not nearly as consistent as we need to be. We did improve that consistency a little bit in the second half, but truthfully, if you go back and look at what we call efficient plays, the bottom line on first down, we want to gain 4 yards with any run play. And then on the second down, we'd like to think if we need 6, we'd like to think that we gain at least half of that 6 yards. So on 2nd and 6, you could say a run's efficient. If it gains 3, gives you a manageable 3rd and 3. I don't think our efficiency was very good for sure in the first half, and maybe even over the game. What always juices up our numbers a little bit, of course, is Cade breaking off a long run. And he had a couple of those today that obviously made a huge difference in our rushing game. So I'm still looking for more consistency, more like we had against Washington. We had a lot of 4-yard plus gains in the run game against Washington. Not many at all last week, and not as many as we'd like to have against the Northwestern team today.
And I noticed a couple of those plays that got blown up were not the result of extra rushers, but they were a result of guys up front just failing their assignment, getting beat. How much of that?
You just got beat into our backfield, yeah. I mean, we shouldn't have that kind of leakage on a run play. Obviously, we should be able to put ourselves in position to keep anybody from penetrating across the line of scrimmage.
So, Don, what are you looking for against the Badgers? I know you haven't watched the Penn State game yet, in that game early in the fourth, but what are some keys to get maybe a win against the best team left on the schedule?
Well, I just think back to the history of Badger football. My guess is even now, if they get a lead, they have the capacity to hang on to it pretty well. In other words, kind of hard to imagine they're not at least decent with their run blocking and decent with their ball carrying. And so I guess one concern I would have is they get a lead against us and they're able to shorten the game and protect the lead. So I think that's another reason to start fast, of course, to energize our fans. I know one of the things I did, I can talk about it now that the game's over. I went back before the game. I went back and looked at Northwestern's 4 previous games, 4 conference games this year. And I simply asked the question, who won the game and who won each of these 25 parameters? What I was looking for, Corey, is a parameter that was 100% reliable in identifying the winning team in those 4 games. Obviously, one of them was won by Northwestern and the other 3 by their opponents. And there were a few parameters that were 100% win. And of course, I made sure that I knew what they were. One of those I recall was score the first points. Score the first points. That's important because in all 4 games, the team that scored first won the game. And a couple of others that were also 4 for 4 were rushing attempts and rushing yardage. And today we won both those 2. So the 3 most important, I'd say, of those 6 parameters that were 4 for 4 in those 4 Northwestern games, the 3 most important, we won all 3. That had a lot to do with us winning the game, of course.
Don, we are waiting an announcement on the start of this Iowa game. I'm expecting that here maybe within a few hours. Do we have you next week, or are you calling a Missouri Valley game?
No, my schedule is open. I will be in Kinnick regardless of the start time.
Very good. And Erica wants a Hayden Fry story from maybe a Northwestern game. That's pretty specific, Don. Do you have one?
Well, I remember one that got us in trouble a little bit. I believe it might have been. It was probably the first time, one of those early games against Northwestern, probably back in the early '80s. I don't know who it was now. The coach that did have a good record, Gary, help me out. Gary.
Back in the day, I don't know, Don.
It's been a while.
Northwestern football back in the day, no.
One of our listeners will remember. Might have been in the late '80s, even maybe. I can't think of I know the guy, but I can't think of his name. Gary. Thank you, Lemansky, Gary Barnett. Lemansky, I knew I could count on you. Gary Barnett, his first game against Iowa was a one-sided game. And Hayden, just trying to be a gentleman, after the game, he made the mistake, I guess you could call it, of saying to Gary, Gary, I'm sorry about the way the game went. It got out of hand. And I hope we didn't hurt too many of your boys today. Well, Gary Barnett used that the next year or two. He was offended by the fact that Hayden seemed to be concerned that we might have injured him a little too much. And also, of course, he made the mistake of referring to them as boys.
Right.
And Gary Barnett used that against us. And somewhere in there, Gary Barnett beat us. I can't remember when. We did dominate against Northwestern back in the day. As you know, over the past 2 decades, it's been very, very even. But back in Hayden's 20 years, I think we won at least 15, if not 16, 17, maybe even 18 of those games. We dominated Northwestern and kept them in their place, except there's at least one game in there where Gary Barnett beat us, as I recall. And one reason he did, he had some good bulletin board material that he used, and I think used to good effect. So that's one of Hayden's few mistakes that he ever made, but that's one that came back to bite us. I don't think he meant anything by it other than trying to be a good sportsman and wish Gary Barnett good luck with the rest of his season. But he took a few words out of context and used them against us. And maybe that helped him to find a way to upset us down the road.
We'll talk about the travel plan. You talk about mistakes for Hayden. He wasn't infallible. We'll talk about the travel to the Tulsa game on a different show. Right, Don?
That's another good one, yeah.
There's another good one. There's another winner. All right. Don, everybody should hit that like button, right? We got 210 people who are still on as we are in hour 3. Hit that like button, folks. It does help us. I'm sorry, we're in hour 4, technically speaking. We're about 3:17 in. So hit the like button, folks. If everybody here was on right now did that, we'd have a bunch of likes. So that'd be great.
And let me make a plea also. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe.
Yeah,
Doesn't cost you a dime to do so. And our numbers do help, I'm sure.
We're climbing, but it's been a slower go than I would have liked, but we are climbing. We're going. We're in the green. We're just need to, accelerate a little faster. Start faster like Iowa football does each and every game. So
how about this for some extra incentive? Somebody out there, Corey, can have the privilege of claiming that they were our 10,000th subscriber, right? We're approaching that.
Yeah, but they have to subscribe to get there. Like, people have to subscribe to get to that point. But yes, you're right. I guess you could help. Everybody could tell all your friends that they need to subscribe, and then you could wait. But just make sure all those friends subscribe. So, folks, follow me on Twitter @From the Hawkeye, and also From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook and Instagram. Are you following the show on Instagram? If you're not, be sure to do that. You can also check out our merchandise. We have show merch in our description. Click the link for our Spread Shop store. And, of course, we'll be back next week talking about Iowa and Wisconsin. And we'll let everybody go because we got about 7 minutes left in the Penn State Wisconsin game. It's a one-score game. It's a one-score game between Michigan and Michigan State. 4 minutes left there. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Don. It's always a pleasure. And I'll, regardless of what Iowa does, what they played their way out of, I enjoy these shows because I get to do them with a guy who's deserving of being a Hall of Famer. So we'll enjoy talking to you next week. And if it's a night game, we'll make a late night out of it as we always do.